This is Eugene Morris of the Brother Gaming, and I'm joined by two wild and crazy guys. Well, introduce yourself.
Hi.
That's Will Morris.
Well, I guess everybody knows who you are!
Will Morris, he's the leader of the Brotherhood of Gaming. Also with us is our resident movie expert here at Morris Productions, Mitchell Cox, a.k.a. the
The Reviewer! I want to have an 80s style theme song for myself.
That'd be awesome, by the way.
Have fun.
Well, later this month, because when this is released, it's going to be June, so just roll with it. Later this month, hey, we have...
How do we know there won't be a brand new trailer of Man of Steel?
No, they won't show anymore. The last one was the new one, so the last one, the final one.
What if there's no press conferences that we don't know about Man of Steel? Like anything Man of Steel?
Next month, it's just canceled. Man of Steel is facing massive legal issues.
Like Smallville, we couldn't get the rights to the suit.
So we had to make a whole new one. Anyway, well, hey, coming out later this month is the new Superman movie, Man of Steel, which is actually the 6th Superman movie. I decided
you got to include the George Reeves Superman movie, the Superman and the Mole Man.
Yeah.
7th.
But a lot of people don't remember that.
Yeah, we're starting from Christopher Reeve on. Anyway, I decided to wrangle these two guys because both these guys are great Superman experts. And I thought we'd just sit around and
to be fair, I am a Superman movie expert. I just a quick backstory. I mean, I didn't read the comics growing up. I wasn't a huge Superman fan, but I loved the movies from the first time I saw them. So that's just me. So
I follow Superman canon-wise.
right. So you're
So my knowledge dabbles in all the things he's in, such as comic books,
right.
His Historia, and a lot of the movie knowledge.
So the three of us basically have a good knowledge of Superman.
We have a pretty good collective understanding of the Superman character.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do a review of the first 4 movies starring Christopher Reeve, the 5th movie, Returns, and our thoughts about Man of Steel. So again, I want to thank you guys for doing this with me.
Yep.
I appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. The very first Superman film. Well,
Superman the movie.
I know that Mitchell will go on for hours about the first Superman movie. So
and he should.
you might want to get comfy.
And I want to. And that's
I apologize to the audience in advance. I do like to do a lot of in-depth discussion.
Yes.
And
that's
since
why I got you here.
And since I got these guys with me, I like to ping ideas off other people.
Yeah.
But
see Will can man up and hang with them.
One thing for me, I think we should, of course, start as with anything. The title of the first movie is, it almost sounds gimmicky. It's just Superman the movie. I don't know what it is. Like, I always hate it when they do that. Like, when you go to go see Jaws.
I thought we were talking about all the Superman movies. What about the Mole Man? That was years ago.
I was being a dick, so...
So I think you don't like the title Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
No, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, I didn't go. Like, they didn't call it Jurassic Park the movie.
Super Mario Brothers the movie.
Okay, we don't talk about that one.
So, you're right. Instead of calling it the movie, we should call him like Superman, that 1 hour and 30-minute special.
You believe that a man will fly. That was the whole gimmick.
That was definitely a lot of, I'm going to address on that. I don't really think it was a gimmick so much as it was, but that was the philosophy of the making of the film. They needed to, that was their staple. If they couldn't make the audience believe that Christopher Reeve or whoever they were getting to play at the moment was actually doing these feats, they would lose the movie. I mean, the reason that George Reeves Superman was always popular, but it was cartoony and blah blah blah.
You never really saw him do much. Like you'd see him take off and then
grab somebody's gun or
he would do some sort of feats of incredible things. Like sometimes somebody would, like going to the I Love Lucy episode. The extent of how far they would go is Ricky having trouble pulling a piano from the wall. and Superman still kind of struggles with it a little bit when he shouldn't be, and he just like throws it out of the way. That's the extent of George Reeves and his Superman abilities. You never really saw him do much beyond that.
And I think that was a combination of the effects at the time.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously it was a TV show.
Right.
I mean, if it was a movie, they probably had different effects. But, I mean, it was a TV show, and for what they did, for the effects they had, I mean, it was nice. It was,
and back then, sorry to cut you off, but back then, comic books were still wildly popular, especially during that time period when World War II was going on. Soldiers and war veterans were reading these comic books, such as Superman, because even back then, Superman, such an iconic hero. The world knows who Superman is. And and being that everybody knows who Superman is, everybody back then also knows the feats he's capable of. So when the shows came out, they didn't have to go too far to explain what he can do. You know what he can do.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's reading the comics, and, you know, they would, if I remember correctly, they would always have a commercial promoting the next or newest comic at the end of at least the first season, I believe, of the George Reeves Superman TV show.
And of course, there's even before the George Reeves ones, there was the 40s.
The 40 serials.
Which and I actually like better than the George Reeves films.
Oh, I do. I love those.
The only thing about those ones was the fact that every time Superman flies, he would like turn into like an animated character.
Yeah, that was really funny.
He'd be live action, then flying animated.
I can't remember what it was. It was some like crappy Dracula movie way back, and that's how they did the flying effects. Like he'd just stand with his cape open. And then he would turn it he'd turn into an animation and turn into a bat, and then it would turn into a fake rubber bat and fly away. That's what it reminded me of. But again, we have to remember that that this was a television production. It was for a weekly basis. It didn't have a lot of money.
Now the thing about the first movie is that it was really the first time that a comic book was being, I think, really treated seriously in a big production like a movie. Because like before that, like the most popular thing you could say was the Adam West Batman TV show. How that was very campy and cartoony. This one was actually was going to be taken seriously.
Like you can complain about the Adam West TV show all you want, but it won't change the fact that it did revolutionize Batman to that audience, and it did change.
That is true.
Right. It was very popular for.
But this was the first one where you actually took a comic book character, you know, a guy in tights, but actually took him seriously.
And tried to make him a very real and grounded character.
It's not that the George Reeves ones didn't take him seriously. It's just their budget wasn't that huge, and they had to work with and even those ones, they weren't as long as regular shows. I mean, these shorts with George Reeves usually went on to 10 minutes to 15 minutes. They didn't run as long as regular shows do with 30 minutes to. So with only 10 minutes, you gotta tell a good story quickly.
Now, Christopher Reeve, was he the right choice as Superman?
I honestly,
anyone else as Superman?
This is something.
What are your opinion on Christopher Reeve?
I know Mitch will go. I know about Christopher Reeve as
I'll let Will go.
For me, I love Christopher Reeve as Superman. He's a great Superman, but I think people give him way too much credit. There's a lot of people that had potential and still can be a great Superman if they let Christopher Reeve go.
I think, honestly, I think that all personal bias aside, I'm going to have to lean a bit towards where Will's going. There are other actors that can play Superman. Like even just delving into the future of the podcast for a second, even Brandon Routh in Superman Returns was not bad. He was all right, but one of the problems was he had to be the Christopher Reeve Superman instead of doing his own thing. Henry Cavill is growing on me. I saw another movie he was in recently. I can't for the life of me remember it, but he's a decent actor. And even George Reeves, I liked him. I liked whoever voiced him in the animated series. But they're all the thing that I think makes the Christopher Reeve Superman the best, in my opinion, was the way he could play the dual role of Superman and Clark Kent. Because up to the point of that, it was literally he put on glasses and nobody knew who he was. There was a point in one of the old serials, I think, where he's like, he always talked in this big brash voice.
That's not something
I'm Superman, and then he put on the glasses. He's like, I'm Clark Kent, and it's like you look at him, you're like, Jesus, how the hell didn't anybody
in all honesty,
figure out who it was?
that's actually bad writing, because even in the comic books, long before Christopher Reeve was around, they had acknowledged that there's a change in character personality.
No, I know. We're talking about media though. We're talking about visual media. We're talking about video.
In fact, I mean, Christopher Reeve, he's great, but you got to also remember, there's a heavy amount of people that put so much work into the writing.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand that. But there are there are also, and see, that's another thing. Superman the movie was lightning in a bottle. It was a great. I mean, you got Mario Puzo who wrote the script. This guy that wrote The Godfather and The Exorcist, and it's just like Richard Donner, who also directed The Exorcist. Marlon Brando. I mean,
I think that's another thing interesting too is the fact that at that time Christopher Reeve was pretty much a very small name. I think before the only thing he really did was he was had a co-starring role in like a submarine movie. So this is like really the first major thing. So surrounding him, they put all these
bigger guys,
Marlon Brando, Gene Hackman, who had done
Ned Beatty. You know, even if they were in smaller roles.
Glenn Ford.
Yes, Glenn Ford definitely was.
Now,
with Christopher Reeve, it goes on. It's the same kind of controversy with Heath Ledger and Jack Nicholson. Mm-hmm. Everybody is too afraid to accept a new person as their favorite character,
and that was something I had to get over when I heard about Henry Cavill. I'm just like, it was just. I was like, nobody will ever beat Christopher Reeve.
Because everybody's just like, oh, you can't beat Christopher Reeve, and everybody gets blasted with the nostalgia factor.
Well, honestly, I don't think anybody can beat Christopher Reeve, but I'm not judging it on a scale of can you beat him. It's just, can you do your own thing?
Well, I think the thing about him is that, and it was like what you said earlier, is that he perfectly captured what the two characters were.
Yeah, and one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when is right after the flying scene, when he comes in as Clark Kent.
Yeah, that's really what he did.
And he walked in, and he was, oh, hello, Lois, you know, his little nerdy thing, and when Lois went to go get changed, he had that moment where he was going to tell her, and he took off the glasses.
He stood up,
and he said, "Lois, I have something I need to tell you." And then as soon as she walked out, he aborted it, and you saw him put on the glasses, and he became a completely different person.
Well, for me, it's almost, in my personal view, it's like he was playing. There was like three different characters. Mm-hmm. There was Superman, which is, of course, the truth, justice, but that was one character he played. There was the nerdy Clark Kent. Yeah. Which was the other character played.
And Kal-El.
But then now Kal-El, which was like in between, that's like his real self, his real personality.
Kal-El is that's who you see in Smallville.
Exactly. Or when he's having like conversations with Lois.
Conversations with Lois, or even when he's talking to the hologram of his father.
Yeah.
Another great performance by Marlon Brando. I am interested to see.
He got a lot of money for that movie, didn't he?
Well,
like 17 minutes of screen time.
When we talk about Superman 2, we'll get into that.
Right.
But another really great thing is it was a really great idea for them to put all these other actors first, even though he was the title character. Christopher Reeve was not enough by word of mouth to get people to come see this movie, and casting all of these bigger names just made an already good actor seem much better. Say what you want about the silly schemes that he came up with. I think that Gene Hackman played an excellent Lex Luthor. He did have some...
Let's segue into that one. Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor.
Hold on.
Go ahead. I'll let you go.
A lot of people have a love-hate relationship with Gene Hackman as not only for him, but the character that he plays. Like, a lot of people prefer Lex Luthor as the corrupt businessman, or you can have Lex Luthor as the greatest criminal mastermind of our time. And Gene Hackman's performance aside, it's again, it goes back to that same controversy where what Luthor do you want?
Yeah, at the time, I think for the 70s, he was the Luthor that was appropriate. Mm-hmm. I think now, with all of these really big corporations, not that there weren't big corporations in the 70s, but with all of these really big, businesses, and especially stuff going out of business, getting bought out, Disney's buying everything, and, everything like that, I think that Luthor is more appropriate for our time period. The corrupt presidential Luthor, who's actually, if you look at him, not a bad person, like when he was president, he did a lot of good things. He brought a lot of money, created a lot of jobs. He just hates Superman.
So much.
He just like he sees Superman as again reaching into Superman Returns a little bit. I believe the line that was said was a god is somebody who flies around in a red cape and a blue costume and doesn't share his powers with humanity, and that's why he hates Superman so much.
But if you had to ask me my favorite Lex Luthor, it's for some reason Michael Rosenbaum.
Yeah, Michael Rosenbaum.
I love him. Don't get me wrong, he is the best. I have to agree with you there. But another reason, just touching back on one last thing to touch back on Christopher Reeve for just one moment. That's also the reason why, and you guys are going to yell at me for this, I know it, I like the Christian Bale Batman better than Michael Keaton.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay. For number one, I think Michael Keaton did a terrible job at playing the Bruce Wayne part. He played Batman the whole time. And again, it became one of those instances, how do they not know this guy isn't Batman? He's like, oh, I'm going to go brood and I never show up to my parties. But then you have the Christian Bale Bruce Wayne who came out and he was like, he came out drunk and with two women in his arms. He's like, hey, bitches! So that would be, and that's what I think, going back to Superman, is the most important part of playing the character of Superman.
Not just Superman, but any superhero in general. You have to be able to have the two characters.
Yes, exactly. Because if you don't do that, you keep wondering why everybody around him is so damn stupid that they can't figure out that this man is a superhero.
Did you guys like Krypton? You guys like how Krypton was?
Everybody loves the Krypton theme.
Krypton is awesome.
Okay, this is something, as we touch on that, this is an interesting fact about my personal experience with Superman. The first time I heard the score to Superman, the complete score, my mom had the soundtrack. I had never seen the movie. I had not seen it. I didn't watch... I had seen Superman-related stuff. I'd seen the cartoon show. I'd seen maybe some of the old episodes of the George Reeves one on TV or whatever. But, and, I knew the themes. It was, even the old cartoons were this dun-dun-dun. It was very big, heroic, kind of fanfare-ish type theme. But when my mom put on that soundtrack and I sat down and listened and I asked her what it was, she's like, Superman. I was like in the 4th or 5th grade, and we were cleaning the house. She's like, this is the Superman soundtrack, and I heard the drum, the timpani go. It was like, dun, 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 dun. So immediately I was hooked. John Williams, if you follow my show at all, is probably my most favorite composer.
Favorite John Williams thing? Superman, Star Wars, or Indiana Jones?
Superman.
I
honestly think his best score is Superman.
Yeah, a lot of people say the new Superman theme. It's great, yes, but here's the thing about it. John Williams didn't just create themes that would be like like things that you're gonna forget 15 years from now. You'll hear this track and you'll be like, oh, what's that too?
Well, it's like when you listen to Hans Zimmer's music, you can put on the soundtrack for Pirates of the Caribbean. They're like, oh, that's from one of the movies that Hans Zimmer did music to.
Yeah. But when you hear John Williams themes, these are made to be memorable throughout all time. Like even if they've aged, you can hear these themes and you'll know immediately where
they're very, very iconic.
Not just the just the Superman theme or the Krypton theme. The theme where teenage Clark is running against a train.
The whole
one where
is
Lois
just
is falling from the chopper.
I love one of my favorite themes is they actually used it throughout the series as the kind of evil theme. But most notably in Superman 2 when they recomposed it it became Zod's theme. Yeah. But it was the trial theme from the first scene. It was these kind of low drums, like kind of this march, and you had this little I believe it was a flute, and it just went
yeah. So did you guys like the design of Krypton?
For me it was hit and miss because I've seen Krypton throughout a lot of transformations and reincarnations. Like
the very artificial crystal kind of...
that was
I loved it. I liked the look of it, but then the one question for me is when they zoom in on the planet and there's that island where they're all living, I'm like, what the hell's on the rest of the planet? Where is everybody?
Let me ask you something. How did Krypton get destroyed? Was it an earthquake?
No, it was
Brainiac.
Or was it the Red Bull in the movie? Was it?
In the
Because
film?
Brainiac
No,
was never
I don't
mentioned.
think
Canon-wise, it's Brainiac.
Yeah, canon-wise,
Well,
Brainiac.
in the
but
modern canon.
in the movie.
In the modern canon, it's Brainiac.
In the original canon, which
I
is what
always
they were
liked-
following, it was orbiting too close to the sun, and the core heated up and expanded.
Well, I always I always liked the theory that the red sun was supernova.
Yeah.
And-
well, that was it too. If you watch the movie, the sun blows up as well.
That's how it happens. Canon-wise, is Brainiac. What he does is like you're supposed to learn this in Superman Unbound, but you actually yeah you do. And if you've read the 2008 novel, it explains Kara, Supergirl, explains the destruction of Krypton and how Brainiac goes from planet to planet, analyzes them to find out what cities are best to be kept contained throughout reality, and they never age. And what he does after that is, since his computer data can't evolve like humanity can or any sort of life form, he'll instead fire a nuclear something at the orbiting star nearby, such as their red sun, and it causes it to have that explosion that caused it to destroy Krypton.
Okay. Now, so Krypton is destroyed, and then we go to the Smallville section. Well, first of all, funny thing about Superman, the first Superman movie. When you watch it, the way it's constructed, it feels like half a movie. Because if you're watching this movie as itself, there are some things that are brought up or never addressed again.
Yeah, like
in
Zod,
that film.
the trial of Zod. They promo, and you're waiting the whole movie for him to come back, and it's never addressed.
It never happens.
Well,
yeah.
the reason for that is that going into the behind the scenes for a bit, Superman 1 and 2 was not written as Superman 1 and 2. It was written as Superman. And it was way too long to put into one movie. And this was before, Lord of the Rings could come out and be a 4-hour movie, and people were okay with that.
Right.
You needed to have a short, or a relatively short running time to keep people coming back, and you could have more showings in one day.
It's a generational thing as time went on. Going back to George Reeves, where his time slot usually you had to tell a story in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
To shows being able to tell shows in 20 minutes. Movies could go on and be an hour and 30 minutes, and now we've gotten to where movies can be 3-4 hours long, and nobody gives a dang.
And I actually prefer longer movies. I know a lot of people that don't, but I do. But going back to that, they basically picked a point in the script and they chopped it in half. And the original ending for Superman the movie was, and which we'll address later in the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2. When Superman throws the missile into outer space, it releases Zod and Non and Ursa, and it was going to end with them flying to Earth, and Lois was dead. The spinning of the Earth thing was a concept they were playing around with for Superman 2. They didn't know how they were going to end it. They couldn't think of a good ending. And then the studio came in and they're like, we need to get Superman into theaters right now. And they're like, well, shit, we don't have an ending. So they're like, well, just choose whatever one. And they felt that unfortunately, due to the time and the creativity that they had already put into the first huge chunk of the movie, they had like a month to think of what to do at the end. So they ultimately decided to make it stand on its own and not, don't leave it with a cliffhanger, because if the movie flopped, they were screwed.
Right. God damn, I hate the ending of Superman 1.
Oh, God.
I love Superman is a great movie, but it has a terrible ending where he flies all the way. Now, I know we all think Superman is all powerful and stuff, but if he flies all the way around the backwards...
It happened in the comic.
Well, it can't happen, Will. You can't make the Earth turn around and make time go backwards.
In the world of fiction, anything is possible.
I hate that, because if you do that, Will, then where's the drama? Where's the drama?
Don't ask me. I'm not a writer.
I honestly, I'm actually working on, personally, I'm working on an edit of the first 2 Superman movies. I'm really trying to get it to what they were originally planning, and I'm finding it very difficult to cut Lois Lane out of Superman 2. No, but I honestly think that even if they had taken the gamble with Lois dying and Zod being released, I still think the film would have been an enormous success. It was just a well-written film. It really was.
I really like the Smallville stuff. You see him as a teenager. Now, was Christopher Reeve doing the voice, though, right?
Yes, it was Christopher Reeve. That actually caused a big problem. The actor that was playing him in the actual scene, he didn't know that he was going to be dubbed over. They didn't tell him. And when he went and saw the movie with his family, it wasn't his voice. And him and Christopher Reeve were actually really mad at each other for a long time, but they made it.
No, what are you talking about?
The actor that played Clark in the Smallville section of Superman 1, with Glenn Ford and everybody, he's dubbed over by Christopher Reeve.
Yeah, it's a different actor, but you listen to the voice, it's Christopher Reeve's voice.
It's Christopher Reeve kind of just doing a younger version of it.
I'd be pissed too.
Yeah,
what the fuck?
It was just like they didn't tell him. It was just like they didn't even think about it to tell him. There were a lot of problems with the production of the movie. For those of you who don't know, I'll probably spend 3 hours talking about it. The Salkinds, I believe that is how you pronounce their name, they were... producers, they did some action comedies. They did a lot of action comedy. They did the Three Musketeers action comedy in the 70s, early 70s. And for whatever reason, they did not like Richard Donner. They felt that his look of... They felt that...
How was Richard Donner? Who hired Richard Donner?
The Salkinds.
The Salkinds?
The Salkinds hired him because they thought he was, he was a good director. And
but they just didn't like him.
They just didn't like him. They didn't like the fact that he was trying to make a very serious, dramatic film. And they're like, no, it's a comic book movie. It doesn't need to be serious. But if you really think about it, a comic book film does need to have a lot of drama in it. I think that's what makes it work.
Right.
As a film, as a comic, you can do whatever you want. It's a different medium. You read it differently. You view it in a different way than you would a movie. And they constantly fought. There were always fights on set. They were constantly, telling him this had to go. This amount of money wasn't available anymore. This scene had to go. This joke had to be inserted. Blah 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 blah. And
do you know where Metropolis was filmed? What city?
It was New York.
It was New York?
Well, remember, they fly past the Statue of Liberty.
That's right. It was New York. It was New York
City.
Right.
It was New York.
It was New York.
They walk through time. They go through Times Square. They go through Grand Central Station.
So Metropolis is New York on a good day, and Gotham is New York on a bad day.
Yeah, pretty much. They just basically substituted Metropolis for New York. I mean, it was whatever.
Which apparently I Love Lucy is canon with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, another thing is that, going back to the production problems, when Superman 2 came out, obviously it was an enormous success. Everybody loved it. And Richard Donner was going off and taking a vacation just so he could take a break so then he could come back to finish Superman 2, which they had already almost finished shooting. He got about 87% of the movie done before they had to focus on finishing the first movie. And he got a telegram and they're just like, yeah, great job, you're fired. And
which
they
leads
brought
into Richard Lester.
Oh God, Richard Lester, Jesus Christ.
Getting in a little bit.
Yes, in a little bit. I'm going to restrain myself.
Superman, first off, did you guys like the climax of Superman? Where he's going around trying to save the missile, trying to have the missiles hit, and he's trying to save the...
I do and I don't. I do because it was fun.
One of the funniest parts is when he flies into the San Andreas Fault and
lifts it up with his back.
But at the same time, it's just like he's trying to catch up with these missiles, and it's like, he's faster than those missiles, right?
Well, apparently that we found
it
out.
Are these the missiles, Lex? Are these the missiles you were talking about? Oh my God!
Yeah, like he flies. The dude can spin around the Earth so fast that he turns back in time, but he struggled to catch those missiles,
That's why I hate that ending, because, like I said, now you can make the argument that, maybe he didn't know he can go that fast. But I want some limits on my Superman and his abilities. At least I want him to obey obey the laws of physics. For a long time, it really bugged me that he could breathe in space. But then I finally wrapped my head around the thing. Oh, he gets his power from the sun. So it wasn't from the Earth, so the sun. So, okay, so he can go out in space.
Apparently, he doesn't need to eat either.
Right. But that's why I really...
I liked that in the interview. In the interview scene where Lois is giving Superman the interview, was, she would ask him things, and you could tell he was just like saying stuff to throw people off. He's like, "Do you eat?"
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you. I want to talk about it. One really cute scene in that movie is the interview where they're sitting down together.
I had one thing that
I love the part where she walks around and he's like, "Pink." Excuse me?
Pink. I'm sorry, Miss Lane. I didn't mean to embarrass you.
One thing I didn't like is I have a problem seeing through that. Oh, you don't want to write that down.
Yeah, if I was Superman, I would have been like, "Excuse me, can I see your notepad for a second?"
Let's see. Do you have any weaknesses? How can we kill you?
Another thing I like too is that there was a lot of Christopher Reeves and Margot Kidder. They really were a sexy couple when you put them together.
Margot Kidder.
Yeah, they were very young. They're very cute. So they had that sexual attraction.
I love Margot Kidder's Lois Lane. She was spunky. She reminds me a lot of Marion from the first Indiana Jones movie.
Yes.
Very spunky, very outspoken. Not the damsel in distress that Lois, again, up to that point had been. Even in the comics, she didn't do much. Mm-hmm. And as far as the movie goes, she didn't do a whole lot, but she at least had somewhat of a personality.
The special effects for the 70s was fantastic.
There's shots in there sometimes still that look amazing.
Good.
Like the helicopter falling is a process shot. It was a model of a helicopter, a model of the building over the top of an actual building, but it looks very photorealistic.
Mm-hmm. The whole thing and the way you caught it. Again, so Superman, the first movie, I think, in my opinion, still, so far, the best Superman movie made.
Yes.
You guys agree with that pretty much?
I can agree with that.
It's a tie.
It's
a tie between me and Superman 2.
Superman really is the quintessential origin story for a comic.
It really is.
And it really is the kind of the model that other movies later on would follow. Now, moving on to the sequel. Superman 2.
Oh, we're going to run into some problems here.
Hold
on. Now, there's different versions.
Let's talk about the theatrical version first.
There's Richard Donner's cut, and then there's the original. I like a lot of the things that were in the Richard Donner's cut, like the extended fight scenes and the extended scene with Jor-El, and those were great. Some of the one-liners I thought didn't need to change. Like, I like the original, would you care to step outside? Instead of the stupid, ever heard of freedom of the press? Like, really?
Yeah, I know.
No, there were aesthetic changes that weren't great.
Right.
Overall, and I know your guys' opinion on this, but I prefer the Superman to Richard Donner cut.
Well, one thing about the Richard Donner cut that I found out is that in that cut, Superman actually throws a punch.
Yeah.
There's a part where Nam is coming at him, Superman comes around.
Yeah. In the original Superman 2, he doesn't do shit. He just sits there and takes a beating, which bothered me.
Well, he picks up and throws Zod.
Okay, that was funny.
Well, the movie starts off, there's like this terrorist bombing or a bombing attempt in like Paris. Superman flies over there.
Why was Lois there?
Because Lois is an idiot.
There's a nuclear bomb on this elevator. I'm going to go check it out. Immediately, I started to dislike Lois. I was like, Jesus, what the fuck are you doing?
She's doing her job. She wants to be famous. She wants to be rich. And for all they know, they haven't turned the bomb on. So she
wants to be famous. She'll be dead.
They made her very intelligent in the first Superman.
That's what she always did, though. She always put herself in danger.
I'm sorry.
Not that blatantly.
This isn't April fucking O'Neil. It's Lois Lane. She didn't do anything until the first Superman movie.
She always got herself in danger.
Well, Superman saves her. He throws the elevator out into the space, which was very funny, which had the bomb connected to it. Now, the bomb explodes, and the shockwave happened to unleash Zod and his cronies.
How the shockwave
who happened to be flying by Earth at the same moment and landed on the moon. Now, first off, before we go on, Terrence Stamp and Zod.
I'm saying this right now. Love Michael Shannon. I will defend Christopher Reeve as Superman. Terrence Stamp as Zod is the best thing that has ever happened to that character.
he was...
He knows how to play a very intriguing and scary villain.
Well, the
Like,
thing about
as silly as that movie was, Zod was terrifying.
Well, the thing about him is that he had like almost like a bipolar personality.
Yeah.
He could be very calm, but when he gets angry, he just flipped the switch.
It was very evident even in the first Superman movie in the trial.
Because the thing about his character is that he knew he was bad.
Yeah.
And because you're dealing with a guy who was the general of an army back on Krypton. And
I love the first movie where he says, "Well, Jor-El, you hold our
It
fate.
has now become your decision. You may condemn us if you wish, and you alone will be held responsible by me."
I mean, that guy knows he's a boss when he says that.
And when he comes on Earth and he's just walking around like a boss knowing that he's ahead, and you know this guy's got scary power, and he's willing to just kill you and not care about anything.
When I was a kid, there was one scene in that movie that really, really scared me. And that was the sequence on the moon.
That scared me too.
No, that is a terrifying scene. Like when Ursa rips off the guy's chest plate and he just like,
dun, dun.
Yeah.
he's just like dead. I was like, oh my god, she killed him.
Yeah.
And Nam just crushes
The
with the guy
spaceship.
screaming in the inside.
And
Really
Zod,
scary scene.
and I think Zod just like throws a guy into outer space and pulls his air tube out.
You, what kind of a creature are you?
I'm just a man.
A man?
I love Ursa. She's so silly.
Those two really played well off.
Yes.
Because she was like, his right
Blow
hand.
them a kiss, my dear.
Don't kiss my dear.
Well, they were the couple. I mean, they've been in the Phantom Zone for thousands of years.
No, it was just like a loyal pit bull.
That was one thing. I really wish they would have done more with Non. But still, as a brute in the 70s action movie, he was very funny.
All three of them, though, Nam was actually the funniest.
Yeah.
It's a real funny scene.
He's trying to use the heat vision.
I like the. I also liked how he was confused by the Newton's cradle. He was like,
Meanwhile, Clark is starting to really start to develop feelings for Lois.
Mm-hmm.
Lois is really starting to figure out that Clark may be Superman. So you have kind of like this developing plot, romantic
that
subplot.
hotel scene.
Yeah. Well, first you had the scene before where she falls off into,
She's like, the kid falls off, and she's like,
No, hold on. Who else thinks that kid had a fucking death wish?
yeah. Hey!
Mommy,
Hey!
look at me!
Hey!
And those parents. Parents of the year.
Yeah.
Mommy, look what I can do. That's nice, Dad.
oh, honey, that's nice. And, like, the kid lets go on purpose. If you look, he had a grip on that thing, and he's just like,
Oh no! I think he knew that Superman was there. He's like, I slipped.
Let's say, happened to be at Niagara Falls, and Clark is not around as usual.
Yeah. Of course, he saves her, but very creative.
Without becoming Superman.
But then he trips and falls, and then you have that hotel.
He did that on purpose.
What do you think
Yeah.
of the whole hotel scene?
I personally despise the pink teddy bear hotel scene from the original Superman 2. I think it's... I like the crossing over to the Richard Donner crowd for just a moment. I like the Lois was so absolutely sure that she was willing to shoot him, not really, but she was willing to bet his life, so to speak, in quotation marks on it. I don't like the fact that that Clark, like, I can't believe that Clark was so stupid enough to reach into the fire while she was looking. He's like, oh no, it's too terrible to look at. It's just like, and then she pulls his hand out. I'm like, you're Superman. She can't physically pull your arm out.
He did it deliberately.
I know.
I know because he was developing feelings and he wanted her to find out.
Right.
I think on a subconscious level, yes. I don't like the fact that he wasn't smart enough to hide the fact, or maybe he just... if it was me, I would have let the glasses go. I would have let I'll just have to buy some new ones.
Well, because he was trying to find out whether he did or not. Because even he struggled. He's like, I don't think I did. But maybe you didn't want to. Maybe you wanted to with your heart. And he was struggling, and that's why he just pulled off that scene. And that's why he was struggling to show her his hand, because he was just like...
So he and Lois fly off to the Fortress of Solitude, And that's a perfect excuse for them to be away and not know that Zod and his cronies have landed on Earth and started wrecking shit. Another sequence I loved too was the sound where they're in the small town in the desert.
Oh yeah.
Let's hold hands. Where they just start.
Tell me if this tickles.
Yeah.
She throws him through the wall.
It tickled.
There were some really scary moments too when blow him a kiss where where he blows so hard in the helicopter.
Those people were dead.
Yes, they were.
You don't
dead.
survive that.
Right. I mean.
Stop. Who else is seeing this?
The whole planet.
Whole planet Houston.
You may proceed.
Houston?
the whole planet Houston?
No, he calls it Houston.
Houston. Yeah, Houston.
Houston.
Earth. You may proceed.
If the entire planet is watching, can we not give them something more interesting to watch? They need machines to fly. Well, back on Krypton, you did too, bitch.
And there's also
I'm sorry. I thought that was a weird joke.
And there's also the third plot where Lex escapes from jail, leaves Otis behind, which is kind of funny. With Miss Tessmacher, who...
North, Mr.
Why
Tessmacher.
she was
North.
still with him after...
Why he didn't kill her?
Why he didn't kill her?
If you watch, there's an
extended sequence.
There's
in
an
the first
extended
one.
where he's going to feed her to the
lions.
The lion. Well, you don't know what they are.
Yeah.
He calls them his babies. It's like a whole plot point that they were setting up this joke for the end. I wish they would have kept it in the movie. It was just like every time he go, Otis, it's time to feed the babies. And he just like, it was basically, the scene in Jurassic Park where they lower the cow down into the Velociraptor pit and he pulls it up, there's nothing on it. It would be Otis lowering down like this huge side of beef. It'd be like, and he'd pull it back up and there'd be nothing left.
Right.
And then he was going to put Miss Tessmacher in there, but Superman saves her.
Right.
I think that she has a bit of a Harley Quinn kind of thing going with Lex.
I still think he'd have killed her.
He tried to, but for getting to the fortress, that's what he needed her for.
Now, they find the fortress... Well, they find the fortress Force of Solitude before Superman and Lois get there. Now, during this whole time, he's watching on TV, and the three, they make their way to the White House. Mm-hmm. White House scene. One of the best scenes in the film.
I like the Richard Donner cut of the fight sequence better, but I'll get into that when we talk about the Richard Donner cut.
Superman decides to give up his powers. What do you think of that whole plot?
It's stupid. He didn't need to give up his powers to be with an earthly woman.
Well, here we get into some of the things about the difference between the original cut and the Richard Donner cut. The Richard Donner cut had Marlon Brando in it.
Yeah, and it had more explanation of why he needed to give away his powers.
Right.
Because if he kept they explained more that if he kept his powers while being in a relationship with this woman, it would affect his judgment, and he would not be able to defend the planet as much. And in the original theatrical version, Marlon Brando was completely absent.
Right.
It's his mother, and another thing I didn't understand, they put in like Krypton elders telling him stuff, and I'm like, they didn't want to have anything to do with Kal-El being sent to Earth. They forbade it. Why the hell would they send him tapes to teach him about Earth?
It's one of those plot holes when you look at the original one.
I very much think it was a huge mistake. That was another thing the Salkinds did. When they fired Richard Donner, everybody was pissed. Yeah. Everybody was pissed. Christopher Reeve kept his mouth shut for the better of the crew. He wanted to... He was a very great...
He wanted to be Superman.
He wanted to be Superman, but on top of that, he wanted to... He liked performing. He was a very strong-willed person.
Well, I know,
He wanted to keep the peace in real life. He wanted to keep the peace between everybody. He didn't like a lot of confrontation between different
now, the
people.
Brian Richard Lester. Now, Gene Hackman didn't like him.
Gene Hackman hated him.
Margot Kidder didn't like him.
Actually, interestingly enough, a lot of people thought that he reshot stuff for Superman 2. He did not. He refused to work with Richard Lester. And every time there's a scene with Gene Hackman that was shot by Richard Lester, it's somebody that's either far off camera or turned his back to the camera, and they have a really poor voiceover artist doing like a Gene Hackman impression.
Right.
And it was mostly just for like insert jokes. It was just like to make him more silly.
Well, in the going back to the White House scene, it has probably one of my favorite moments in any comic book movie, where you see these three supervillains who have just taken over the world, so easily.
Bored out of their
And they're
mind.
so
Bored
bored.
out of their freaking skull. It's
You're
like
master of all you survey.
Yep, as it was yesterday and the day before
it's
that.
like you get what you want. Now what?
Yeah, it's the question that you got to ask all these supervillains. Once you take over the world,
Of course.
Yes, of course.
Sorry, I had to get that.
like, what do you plan to do?
Yeah. Now
What then?
they go. They find the challenge.
It reminds me of. Excuse me for that. It reminds me of like a little Wile E. Coyote cartoon. It's the one. It's the one episode where he finally catches him.
Yeah.
He shrunk himself, and the Roadrunner felt sorry for him. So he came back and he's like, "Here, you caught me." And then like Wile E. Coyote's like, "Yeah," and then he stops, and then he just looks at the camera, and it cuts. And it was just like, he's like, "Now what the hell do I do?"
As silly as this movie is, there are some pretty emotional moments in that movie. One of the most emotional is when Clark has given up his powers. He goes to Lewis, and then you have the scene in the diner where he gets his ass kicked, and then he finds out that Zod. Zod! It's taken.
Is there no one on this planet to even challenge me?
Yeah, there's one really stupid thing that I thought that was stupid at the end of that scene. And it was nice and emotional when he was doing it and walking in the snow. It's just like, how did they get off the Krypton in the first place? What
Or the Fortress of Solitude.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the Fortress.
Where'd they get the car?
Yeah, why didn't she drive him back?
Now another difference too is
Clark,
that
do you need a ride? No, I'm good.
I need to walk in Brood.
another difference is like again with Marlon Brando not being in the original, it kind of didn't make that scene as emotional as it was in the Richard Donner one because the Richard Donner you actually had Marlon Brando and Christopher Reeve interact.
And then you never find out how he got his powers back. He finds the green crystal, and then he just has his powers
Yes, in
back.
the original one, he just finds the crystal, and then
It
he
became
just has
Deus
power
Ex
back.
Machina. The crystal gave him his powers back. But within the original continuity, the life force of Marlon Brando, of Jor-El, was still inside of these. He wasn't fully dead, but in the Richard Donner cut, he gives him the last of his energy because it didn't make it was really silly in the original cut where they're just like, yeah, you can turn his powers on and off, not a big deal. They could get the powers. He got his powers back at a severely, very emotional and tragic cost that he would never be able to speak to his father again.
Right.
I mean, even the only ones he could talk to would be the pre-recorded crystals that he already possessed.
Right.
But as far as having interactive conversations, he would not be there. Which is if you really think about it, that's like, you wake up in the hospital and the doctor tells you, you needed a heart transplant. Your dad was the only one that matched. And it's just like, it's this tragic loss that this person gave up for you to live. Not only once, but twice.
To get him off of Krypton, and then to give him his powers back. Now, of course, when you talk about Superman 2, everyone remembers the one thing, the fight scene in Metropolis. What were your favorite moments during that fight scene? Go ahead, Will.
I like the punch. Bam! I like Ursa with the sewer lid. Superman! I like when he gets tossed in the Coke.
Or he spins around.
That was so neat! He picks him up by an arm and a leg.
There was this real weird scene where...
I love the line, he actually cares for these people. Like pets, I suppose.
I've noticed his weakness. He cares. He cares for these Earth people. Like pets. I suppose so. There's another bizarre scene. He's caged Non.
Non should be able to get out of there.
Yeah.
Well, another bizarre scene is where Zod is standing on the roof, like next to a sign.
Oh, yeah,
and he's
and-
shooting the heat beams at like this truck, and then Superman takes like the mirror and reflects back at him. Yeah.
And it leaves his outline on the billboard that's not burned. That was funny.
I don't know how.
At least it was better than the fight in Superman 4.
Like, I don't
I'm
know
gonna
how
blow up these buildings. Stop! Don't make me yell at you some more.
Go ahead, Will.
Like, I don't know how possible that really is, though, with the laser beams being that
The
heat vision.
Would melt the
is hot.
mirror.
Yeah, the heat vision is hotter than a star.
Yeah, I know, it's one of those gags that just gotta go with.
It was.
You know,
Superman
it was
2
a
was
great
not as good as
fight.
Superman
It was a great fight, but then they had like the slapstick comedy afterwards, where
when they were blowing the things
and
down the
people
street,
are,
and like the guy's on his rollerblades going like, "Oh, I'm going backwards."
And that also shows you the thing about Richard Lester, that Richard Lester was a comedy director.
You know, he had never ever seen any Superman-related thing ever in his life when he took up that job.
Yeah, you had the guy in the phone booth that fell over.
Yeah.
With him in it.
Yeah. All right, now let's go to the ending of that film. And there's some very interesting moments that happen.
Superman's running away! Come back! Don't leave us!
Yeah, you know, the scene in Krypton. Well, first, number one, the S. Where he takes the Well, I wasn't expecting that. Yeah, showed you.
In all honesty, I think that was sort of an homage to Golden Age Superman, where he would make up powers on the fly.
Ooh, okay.
What did that do? It briefly stopped you.
Yeah, Golden Age Superman, he had that power. He could make up abilities right on the fly, such as being able to transform into different people. Like, oh, weird.
So,
I don't.
A cellophane S.
What do you think of the ending of that film, Rich?
Super kiss. God damn that super kiss. His tongue just reaches into their brain and picks out the parts he doesn't like.
That's another thing. Is that the thing I heard about Superman 2 is they had these cop-out endings that reset the status quo.
Yeah.
I like the kiss more than I like the turn back time. It's like, why didn't he do that in the first place?
But I must say, don't like the kiss. I'm gonna have to agree with. Sorry to plug into the show. I'm gonna have to agree with Doug Walker on this. You know, why didn't he use this before? I mean, it would have been really awkward, but
yeah, just kiss.
Fucking Lex Luthor. Who the hell am I?
I think Robot Chicken even made fun of
Yeah,
that.
they did.
They did.
One thing, though, I don't like about the Richard Donner ending is that they used
Well,
rotation.
that was out of complete. It was for two reasons. Number one, in the original script and how
That was
Richard
their original
Donner-
ending.
That was the ending that they had so far. They had not written a different ending, and seeing as the budget they had to create the Richard Donner cut when Warner Brothers gave them the go ahead, they still screwed Richard Donner over because they gave him like this little tiny ass budget, and it's really apparent in the special effects that they had to create for the movie. It looks like something somebody did in like Adobe Flash.
Yeah.
But the actual turning back of the Earth was the only footage they had that he had shot himself and wasn't Richard Lester. And it was in Richard Donner's mind, Clark Kent never kissed Lois. He should never kiss Lois. It should always be Superman. I really would have liked the fact that if they had kept it, you know, I like this emotional scene. They cut it down in the original theatrical cut when he brings her back home, and she's like, so it's just gonna go back to the way things were, and you're like, yeah, I mean, you can't move in with me, you can't be close to me, but they both know who he is and why they care about each other. And then, somebody did a fan edit of Superman 2 that I really liked the ending, and it just goes back to the way it was without doing the kiss or without doing the turning back the Earth, and it was just them pretending that everything was okay, which is kind of a bittersweet ending, and I like that. I don't care for either ending of the movies. I don't like the kiss, and I don't like the turning back of the Earth.
Final thoughts on Superman 2.
The theatrical cut.
Yeah, theatrical cut. It's a flawed movie, but still a fun one.
It's a fun movie. One thing I will say about the differences between the Richard Donner cut and the theatrical cut. The theatrical cut was a better in-theater popcorn movie experience. It was better. It was more. It had a lot. It was faster paced. It had a lot of jokes in it. It kept audiences entertained. As far as an extension of Superman the movie, the Richard Donner cut wins by an immense amount. It feels like it's the actual continuation.
Final thoughts on Superman 2.
I liked them both, actually. I think that Superman 1 and Superman 2 were both equally great films. Like, it's the ones after those ones that didn't...
Now we're about to go into the next one. Now I just had a thought. When Joel Schumacher took over directing, and he did Batman Forever. However, he still had Tim Burton as a producer. So he kind of had that Tim Burton influence. It wasn't until the next movie when Tim Burton was gone and Joel Schumacher was completely taken over that we got Batman and Robin.
And this is the same thing we got because Richard Donner had already shot most of Superman.
Even though Richard Lester was the director, it was basically Richard Donner's film.
Yes.
Well, now Donner was gone. Now we get Superman 3, which is Richard Lester's...
Superman 3 was created because the producer, the Salkinds, turned on a talk show and saw Richard. Why is everybody named fucking Richard? Richard Lester, Richard Pryor, Richard Donner. But they saw Richard Pryor on a talk show saying, "I like Superman," and they're like, "He needs to be the star of the film."
Okay, now before we even start, everybody out there. Richard Pryor was an amazing comedian.
He was.
Fantastic.
I love him. He is hilarious.
Maybe sometimes a little too dirty in his jokes, but otherwise he was a very great comedian.
He was the guy that influenced guys like Eddie Murphy, Chris Tuck, Chris Rock.
Yes, he was a very, very influential comedian.
For his time.
And his stand-up is excellent.
But he was great. But
I will say this, Superman 3... He is not funny for 1 second in that movie.
Even he knew that this movie was bad.
He was just in it for... It's one of those movies that he was just in it for a paycheck.
He knew this movie was bad. He said so himself on one of his those
talk shows
that he was on. He's just like, Superman 3 sucked.
Well, here, of all the Superman movies, Superman 3 is the one I've seen the least. So...
Actually, it's the one I've seen the least too.
I've seen it the least, but I do know what happened.
Yeah, me too.
So
I'll
probably
it's
rely
forever
on Will
etched into my memory.
Now, the whole thing is like... Well, first, Margot Kidder's in it for like a second. It's like blink and you miss her, right?
She's
Lane.
in the first scene and the last scene.
Well, hold on. Now, you guys are getting ahead of yourselves. You got to remember the opening scene.
Oh, God.
You bitched about the slapstick at the...
I'm going to go get a Coke. I need a Coke for this.
I'll get one for you.
Oh, thank you.
Get me one. You bitched about the slapstick in Superman 2, and they were blowing the people.
No. This
was
way out of line. No. You want to see... You play some fucking Looney Tunes music over the top of the opening scene from Superman 3. Oh, and where was our title sequence? Where was our outer space epic title sequence?
I will say this, though, guys. I will say this. That scene does perfectly set the mood for the film. You want to know what
yes, it does.
You want to know what you're getting into? Yeah, this was the movie's way of saying, leave now.
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Or
you had your chance.
Or better yet, right after the opening credits, it's like the movie said, did that make any sense?
Everybody confused?
There
Good.
was like this weird subplot involving like a ball machine?
A ball machine and a blind man.
And a blind man. Like I said, there's so many things I know. Well, the general thing is like Clark goes back to Smallville, right?
And then we have Smallville's Lana Lang.
Which is interesting.
Which is interesting because she became the mother in...
Annette O'Toole, who played Lana Lang in that movie, would go on Smallville to be Martha Kent, which is pretty cool.
A lot of, like Terrence Stamp, who played Zod, became Jor-El which was really creepy. The first time I heard his voice, I was like, what the fuck, Zod?
And in Smallville, Christopher Reeve would return.
Yeah, Christopher Reeve he was Dr. Swan, right?
Yeah, he was
Professor Swan.
Professor Swan. Now, the thing about the movie is that didn't this movie have red kryptonite, Will? There was some sort of...
It was sort of red kryptonite. It was still green, but it had the same effect as red kryptonite.
I think they said it was red kryptonite.
But it was still green, which didn't make any sense.
Well, the thing about the red kryptonite, and this is part of Superman lore, is that it changes his personality, or at least it gets rid of his inhibitions. Mm-hmm. And he can, like I said, he doesn't...
He becomes
it depends. Like, the red kryptonite has sometimes changed. It changes, like you said. But it can also mess with your powers.
Okay.
As far as Superman 3's continuity, it was still green, which didn't make it... Why the hell did Superman pick it up? He's like, oh, yeah, kryptonite. Cool. But it was a synthetic kryptonite, but because it was a foreign entity, there was one mineral that wasn't known to human science.
Yeah.
So Richard Pryor's character, like, I think it was, like, charcoal or, like, something that wouldn't matter, but it did.
Guys, let me ask you something.
Yes.
Does it seem to you like Lex Luthor was supposed to be in that film?
Definitely.
Because that millionaire,
that was another thing.
eccentric millionaire seems just like another version of Lex Luthor.
That was another thing. They asked him to come back. Who's directing? Richard Lester. Nope. Margot Kidder, her brief appearance in that film was a punishment for for what she had said about Richard Lester in the Superman. She kept going to the producers. Why did you hire this guy? He's terrible. He's very rude. He's making us reshoot these scenes that don't need to be reshot. Richard Donner had his hands on it. He had this project. And then they're like, fine, you don't get to be in Superman 3.
No, the plot of Superman 3 basically is Richard
what
Pryor's
happens?
like a computer guy, right?
Well, what happens is Richard Pryor, he's down on his luck. He's trying to get a job, and he goes to this course class where he learns to be good at a computer, except he doesn't learn. He's just naturally talented. And today we call those hackers. Yeah, so he gains the ability to be
Unix system.
He gains the ability to be a hacker, and what he does is he hacks into the computer base and ups his paycheck.
Okay.
And the CEO of the company recognizes it, and he catches on to who it is, and he's just like, "Oh, so we know what you're about. You want more money. Everybody wants more money. That's fine. You want more money? We'll give you more money, but you got to come and work for us."
If you want to see a comic book villain, this guy. This guy!
Other than this, all he was missing was twirling his mustache, right?
Oh, yes, Superman! Well, one thing that was really, really funny is in the opening sequence where the penguins get set on fire and Superman picks them up and he's like, and he puts it down on the floor and he pets it.
I was a child when I saw Superman.
It's one of those movies
and I looked at my mother and I was like, "What's going on? What's happening?"
And then there's the part that doesn't make sense when the crash over the fire hydrant starts filling up the car. I don't know how that works.
Wasn't there a...
Oh no, I can't open the door.
Wasn't there a scene where there was like a big traffic accident or something, and...
It was during the slapstick
During the
part.
slapstick, yeah.
And that's what caused the guy to drive over a fire hydrant.
And the water starts filling in the car. And I'm like,
which
how does that
doesn't
work?
make any sense.
Yeah.
One thing I must say about the villain, say what you want about the land schemes that Luthor had. This guy's main goal was to control the world's coffee resources. What the fuck? Oh, no. Later on, he gets the idea to control oil, which still is like,
What the fuck?
whoop-de-doo.
Whoop-de-doo.
And now we have two plots going on. Well, okay, Superman and Jimmy, or Clark and Jimmy, go to Smallville, and as they're heading there, there's a lab that unfortunately gets set on fire.
Chemical lab.
A chemical lab, and Superman has to go to a lake, freeze the lake, pick up the lake, and then melt it on top.
Because that's
of the
how
lab.
ice works.
Yeah, because that's how ice works.
I like that the ice melted and became rain as it was falling, but you know in real life, he killed all of the firefighters and everything with just a giant slab of ice that fell on top of them.
And I'm just like, no, I'm pretty sure his breath that can freeze things instantaneously would have been enough. But that's where they mention one of the key plots is there's a chemical that melts absolutely anything technological that it touches.
Right.
Which becomes memorable later for some reason.
Now, the millionaires, they hired Richard Pryor in order to make like this ultimate computer, right?
No, that was his idea.
Oh,
That is his idea.
That's
They
right,
wanted
he did.
him.
I'm sorry.
They wanted him to create kryptonite, so it would kill Superman.
And then Richard Pryor was just like, okay, I'll do this, but I want a computer. And he's just like, well, what kind of computer? And it's like, oh, I want a computer that'll do whatever I tell it to do. And then he's like, well, what'll that do for me? It'll do whatever you tell me to tell it to do. And he's like, oh, a supercomputer. And that's basically, they're just like, okay, let's do it.
This is the closest we
What do you
got to
think-
Brainiac in this movie.
What do you think of the two girls he had with him? One was like a blonde airhead, the other one was like a
Well,
very...
she wasn't. That was the thing. She was secretly like a genius.
Oh, okay.
Remember, she had these airhead tendencies, and then she when the computer did something wrong, she's like, "Oh, you should do this," and they look at her like, "I read it in a magazine," and it's just like, it's like she was secretly a genius. They had no point being in that movie other than the
Boobs.
kind of robot.
Yeah, but he was right. This is the closest we did get to Brainiac. And one of the most retarded scenes is when he's flying at the supercomputer. They have the Atari screen.
Oh, God. Well, before that, though, the kryptonite is changing Superman's personality. So it has that weird scene in the bar.
Oh yeah, he melts the glass.
Melts the glass, just acting like an ass. But then he falls into the dump. And I will say this, though.
That
You
scene
get
was
a
awesome.
pretty cool scene where I don't know how it happened, but there was a fight between Superman and Clark Kent.
Yep.
It was this. I like to think the way I look at it, in a perfect world, I'm reading way too much into this because it makes me enjoy the movie just a tiny bit.
Yeah.
I like to think that he was passed out on the ground, and this was his inner turmoil.
Yeah, this is like in his
it was a visual representation of him trying to beat out his
the poison. Now, It was a great scene, but unfortunately it was wrapped by so much not greatness that I felt weirded out by it.
It was an actually gripping scene.
Yeah, it was the only scene in the movie that I'm supposed to feel something that's serious. But the whole rest of the movie took itself like a joke that I don't know what I'm supposed to be feeling during this.
It reminds me. I'm sorry. It reminds me of a saying of, I'm a big football fan, and
oh, are you?
Yes, and there was a time where my team wasn't doing so well, and one of the best players on there said this great line. He's like, we had some diamonds, but unfortunately, we also had a lot of crap surrounding the diamonds. And when you mix anything with crap, everything just starts to smell.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about that scene. You had a diamond in there.
Speaking
but
of
like
diamonds,
what you were saying, there was all this garbage around it.
That I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. Like, it's kind of like, was it worth it when I got to the diamond?
Right.
Like, is this worth it?
No, it was not at all. Because then we go right back into the slapstick.
Right.
But I like
when Superman was evil, he did minuscule things, like he blew out the torch at the Olympics.
And I'm like, oh.
And he put the Leaning Tower of Pisa straight.
Yeah, and of course you had the guy who had to knock out all his little miniatures and make new ones, but with it straight. Okay. But then we go to the Atari sequence. Why? Because this movie was made in the early '80s, and what was popular in the early '80s?
Video games,
Atari.
And I'm curious, like, if there was no crash, would they have made that game real? The death of Superman, you have to shoot him down.
I want to play Superman. I don't want to be in missiles.
And then we get to the ridiculous
fight.
Oh, no. Before that, we get the part where Richard Pryor saw Superman for the first time, and he's trying so hard to be funny. During the part where he's trying to explain the whole event to him, when he gets
down and he goes,
he gets the tablecloth and he's like, he's got his cape on and he's jumping around doing it. I'm like,
I'm sorry, I forgot to bring my funny today.
Yeah, it's like Richard was just definitely there.
It's like, can we go back to Clark in Smallville doing something?
Take it back. Go back to when there wasn't Richard Pryor.
Well, all right. Now the climax. We had this Superman facing off against this mega computer.
That for some reason is more powerful than he is.
No, he can't breathe in a plastic bubble, apparently, but he can breathe in outer space.
He can
breathe in outer space. That's fine, but a plastic bubble, God no. And there's the supercomputer that uses its wiring to grab him, and by God, that is the most powerful wiring ever because he just cannot get out of it. He manages somehow.
I like that it turned the bitchy woman into the robot lady, and
again closer to Brainiac.
Closer to Brainiac. That was funny. It was scary being the thought of being completely mechanized and having no. I mean, the thought of it is scary, but within the context of the movie, it's absolutely hilarious.
Before that, though, they had the scene where Richard Pryor's character redeems himself because he's not a bad guy, but he was kind of
he's a hacker that tries
he was kind of wrapped up into this, and he saves Lex Luthor when he saves Superman when he takes the axe and destroys the.
And he's realized the computer is fixing itself.
Right.
Yeah, but actually, what Superman ends up destroying because what he does is he leaves and he goes back to the lab at the beginning of the movie, takes the chemical that burns its way through anything. And the chemical couldn't analyze it, and what he did was he put it inside of it.
Because it only burned through it when it got to a dangerous temperature.
Yeah.
So it actually was
for some reason, Superman's heat vision that can shine brighter than a star and melt a planet when you stare at it is not enough.
I was about to say that his solution to that plan was pretty smart if you think about it. But it was pretty smart. However, when you start thinking about it more. It doesn't make any sense at all because he has all these other powers that could have taken out the computer. Like I said,
I could throw you into the.
I could throw this computer into the sun.
And also, he could use his ice breath to freeze the entire facility, which would turn any computer or any electronic thing off automatically.
Well, maybe you could kind of make the argument that there were civilians there too. There was.
All three of them. In the
Still-
middle of a canyon.
Still, it is Superman. He's going to try to save as many people as... I don't see him actually trying to kill anyone. Like, that's me just trying to offer up like a devil's advocate argument for the whole thing.
It's hard to defend this movie.
And then also there's...
But don't worry, we'll get to Superman 4
But
eventually.
then there's the other subplot where we have the bully from Clark's childhood.
Yeah, wasn't he like dating Lana?
No, he was like...
Because Lana had a kid, didn't she?
Well, it was his... Wasn't it his kid?
Was it his kid?
It was
or
her ex-husband. She
ex-husband
married
or something
him.
like that?
I think it was supposed to be the bully from the first movie.
No, that's what I'm saying. But she had married him
Is that
and
right?
then divorced.
Yeah, and then divorced,
but he wanted her back.
Want her back, right.
And then he tried to beat up Clark, and it just didn't...
And
The bowling alley scene where the kid's trying to bowl and Clark fakes a sneeze to blow the bowling ball into the... Yeah, and it just explodes. Seriously, nobody thought that was odd?
Was there like a romance going on, or building a romance between Clark and Lana?
Yeah, like, even
at the end, they imply that he doesn't love Lois anymore. Like, it's just like that. He forgot about her.
Because even Lois is just like, oh, you're going out with Lana, great. And that's for Smallville.
And he's like, yeah.
Yeah, and
the
the
ring.
movie-
The ring, he gets a piece of coal and crushes it in his hand and creates this giant-ass diamond.
And the movie ends with him going to Lana, and they're leaving.
Which we will completely ignore in Superman 4.
Final thoughts of Superman 3.
Terrible waste of time. It is a joke on the character. It is a joke on Superman's mythology. It's embarrassing to watch, even.
Are there any good moments in that film?
The fight
scene
between Clark and Superman. That's
And
it.
as hokey as it is, I find the climax to be kind of pretty entertaining. Even though it doesn't make any sense, because Superman could kick this thing's ass in a second, but for what it is
Oh no! A bubble! My one weakness!
Your final thoughts, Mitchell, on Superman 3.
I don't like to think about it. I have no final thoughts because I choose not to think about it. No, it is a terrible movie. Richard Lester, the Salkinds, when they fired Richard Donner, made the worst decisions in their careers. They destroyed it almost destroyed the Superman franchise forever. Like there was nothing. I mean, sales for everything went down. Nobody liked Superman 3.
Alright, so now we move on to Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. First thing you notice about Superman 4...
It's better than 3.
It's better than 3!
However, there is one thing, though, that Superman 3 is better than Superman 4. You see
special effects?
how small the budget must have been, because the special effects are... Will right now on Sony Vegas can make more special effects than it was in Superman 4.
Oh, wow, gee, thanks.
But again, that's not an insult, but that's just the truth. That's just meant to show you how poor the effects are for Superman 4. I guess because Superman 3 did so badly, they wanted to kick out another Superman movie and do it as cheaply as possible.
No, Superman 4. Well, it killed Superman for a while. I believe I'm looking at IMDb.
Yeah, because wasn't
Superman 3 came out in '83, and Superman 4 didn't come out till '87. So for a while there was a bit of a cease. Christopher Reeve wanted to make a serious Superman movie again to redeem it. Mm-hmm. So he came up with an idea, and even looking at the movie, there's a lot of love in the basic plot. But through all of the rewrites and through all of the studio changes, this movie started out with a very large budget, and at the last minute, they decided to cut it completely. They cut I think they cut it in half.
But fortunately, they did keep one scene. Because we see it about 12 times. That's Superman flying at the screen.
I saw somebody do a GIF where it's just him going in and out and in and out and in and out.
Okay, well, alright. So, first of all, you had that scene where he saves the Russians with his cape flying.
Now, hold on. When I first saw this movie, I actually got tricked. Because I stopped the movie the first time I watched it because I thought I got the wrong version.
Really?
Yeah, because you don't hear English the first time. I tricked. I thought I bought like the wrong version. Like the words. I mean, like the text was English, but like for the first 2 minutes or like first 5 minutes of the movie,
Yeah,
they're speaking a different language, and I'm like, wait a minute, did I get the wrong? I called the
Superman
store.
is speaking.
I'm like,
Russian.
hold on a second, something's wrong here. And then I skipped through the movie. I'm like, wait, hold on, they're speaking. Oh. Okay.
Well, going back to again looking this up, the movie started out with a budget of $36 million, which is a big budget, especially at the time. And then when the Canon Pictures was experiencing financial problems in quotation marks,
Movie suckage.
Yeah.
they cut the budget to 17 million from 36 to 17
it's
million.
sliced in half, yeah.
It was a terrible.
Now, even still, I believe that a lot can be done with 17 million. Like, I can, like, if you know how to stretch a penny and know where to...
They did, and it shows terribly.
So many obvious screenshots, so many wires you can see.
The fact that the fight sequences are anything but. It's just Superman standing there while Nuclear Man just goes, "Ah! Stop! Stop! Don't do it! The people! Ah! I'm telling you not to! Ah!"
What do you guys think of Nuclear Man?
I thought it was an interesting idea, but the brainless oaf gag had really worn thin on me.
First, I had fun.
Why did he have Gene Hackman's voice?
Gene Hackman's voice.
No,
Destroy Superman.
the stupidest part, but the most hilarious part in that movie is during the museum scene when they show.
I know what you're talking about.
No.
Yeah, they show, and we have a strand of a lock of Superman's hair that can hold up a 1-ton weight,
But it can be easily cut in
snip.
half with a pair of with a pair of fucking bolt
scissors.
cutters.
Yeah, like he
If
just
you
goes
look
in,
close, if you look at the bottom, when the weight is supposed to break out the bottom of the display, if you watch the bottom, it falls before the ball drops. Like it's like when he breaks the glass was even too heavy to keep it, so it falls. So there's a big circular hole in the bottom already when he cuts when he cuts Superman's hair.
You look at the... Alright, now, first of all, special effects are horrible. But you look at the story and the plot. There's like moments of
It could have been.
seriousness
there's
and
moments of
thought.
genius in this script.
Yeah, but it just doesn't ever come
Well, like
together.
one of the things where it seemed like it was leading into a good idea and then went completely the opposite direction was when Superman was addressing the UN and saying, you know, I'm going to get rid of all of nuclear weapons. It would have been much better if everybody would have freaked out and like, no, you can't do this. I think you should. Well, you're an idiot. Russia, blah, 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 blah. But instead, everybody stood up and clapped and they're like, yeah, we're okay with this.
Doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense.
Just because you take nuclear weapons away doesn't mean you're going to stop war.
No.
People are still going to fight.
Destroy Superman now.
Lex Luthor...
It's really hard to comment on.
Lex Luthor, how do you think he was used in this film?
He was used very poorly, and even though he did have... I liked that they gave, like... The one thing I did like about it was that he...
Surprised Gene Hackman came back.
the only reason he came back was because Richard Lester wasn't directing it anymore.
Right.
I think I like the idea that he didn't have a master plan anymore. He's just like, I'm gonna get revenge on Superman.
He had his, like, nephew with him.
Oh, God!
Played by
no.
John Cryer.
No. It's the dude of Steel.
Yeah, because what was popular in the 80s was, like, those teen comedies sort of things. So I guess they figured we need, like...
Not only did they use him there, but remember when they botched Castlevania?
Yeah.
Like, Alucard?
Yes.
Oh, dude. I'm like, oh my god, Alucard, what did they do to you?
Yeah, that's basically the same thing. They wanted to use that kind of 80s kind of comedy. 80s comedies, these teen comedies are great. We need someone like that in our Superman movie to bring in the teens.
Dude.
It's the super dude.
No.
Superman.
No, it's the dude
your,
of steel. That's what he
Take
called
your
him.
fist and put it through his chest. Just so you don't have to. All right, but there's another scene is when they recreate almost shot for shot the flying scene between Clark and Lois, which was just so much filler. Because what was the point of that scene?
It was to establish that Lois still remembered who he was, only for him to erase her memory again with the fucking super kiss.
So
Where's Lana?
I got so
Where's
confused.
Lana?
Like,
Where did she go?
I got so confused during that entire thing. Like he scratched him and then he got old, and I'm like, what?
What is going
Well,
on?
before we go into that, like the Daily Planet gets taken over by this new guy who has a daughter, and they're like trying to change up the way the news is, or they want to go like more sensational, or more like tabloidish. I like that. I thought that's kind of interesting, where you kind of like have a clash between the old values and the new value. No, it's all we have to, it's all about selling papers, God, who's the girl? Hemingway? Martha Hemingway? I forgot.
I don't know.
But the whole thing is that Lex uses the strand of hair, like makes some sort of calculations or science, puts it on one of the nuclear bombs
That
and
Superman throws into the sun,
and
which of course has no negative repercussions.
and then mutates, uniform and all, into Nuclear Man. And then they have
He grows his nails.
then
That's a
they
superpower.
have about the worst fight scene seen on cinema since Kirk versus the Gorn.
I just like that his power is that he grows his fingernails. It was like Meg in that Family Guy episode where everybody got powers and Meg could just grow her fingernails. Ow! Ow, that hurt. I mean, it didn't draw blood or anything, but still, ow!
There was like a scene where he was like Nuclear Man was like going around like causing damage, and Superman was like saving them. And then like last part was like the Statue of Liberty, right? He like picked up the Statue of Liberty
By its finger.
by his finger, of course. Superman put it down. Then that's when he gets scratched from behind. Right?
He's
And then he
scratched
gets
on the
old.
neck.
Yeah.
He becomes old. And then he gets the green crystal from...
Deus Ex Machina.
He gets the green crystal out of his spaceship from the farm. Oh yeah, the farm. People are trying to buy the farm.
Yeah.
And
Again, interesting scene. Again,
that could have worked in a better movie.
Like, the old clashing with the new, and Clark forcing to change himself.
Now
or
I find
adapt,
that was a subplot that could have been done really
Sure,
well.
yeah.
Because you got his business that is changing around him. It's not Superman that's really in trouble much.
Clark.
It's Clark. His livelihood that he's been trying to disguise himself
His
with.
values, yeah.
So you know how other superheroes, like their secret identity, like Peter Parker, is their normal way of life, but the character that they disguise himself as, Spider-Man, is the superhero. That's the life that often gets clashed and messed up. But with Superman, that's not how it is. He wakes up every morning and he's Superman. The disguise he puts on is Clark Kent. So his disguise is Clark Kent. His livelihood disguise is the one that's getting clashed.
Exactly. So
And that's genius.
It is.
Like I said,
in a
there's
better movie,
there's
what could have been?
pockets of interesting things, but the overall plot is so weak that it just can't hold it together.
Because I think that it would have been interesting if they had dwelled on that, where he has to take a break from being Clark Kent because he can't really keep up with it, and he isolates himself as Superman at home in the fortress.
Becomes more of a character study. Yeah.
Because he can't evolve.
Right.
It would have been much better.
Well, of course, then you had the ridiculously tastic scene, climax scene, where they have that horrible fight on the moon, where you can actually see the walls in the background.
The black curtains.
You're almost like, is this a Monty Python movie? It's supposed to be a...
No.
And then, of course, he takes the girl out into space. She can breathe in space.
She can breathe in space.
Just
Everybody
because,
can breathe in space now.
Why? Because shut up. He moves the moon in front of the sun. That won't have any effects on the Earth, not at all. On the ocean, no. Let's go to Sailor Moon with a report.
The moon is getting closer!
Oh my God! Thank you, Sailor Moon.
God.
Oh, Jesus.
Well,
It's better than Superman 3.
Final thoughts on Superman 4. Spreading Superman 3.
No. We're not anywhere done with Superman 4.
All right, continue, Mitch. What do you want to talk about?
Okay. Who the hell was this other love interest that showed up? Another thing we forgot to mention. Daily Planet is being taken over by another company where they don't care about real stories.
Yeah.
Fox News. No. But it was... They just went... They're like... I love this scene where the little boy Jeremy, we forgot about him. He writes a letter to Superman.
Yeah,
and he's
that's
like,
right.
I know who we could tell that would do some good. Superman. He just writes him a letter. And he's like, I need you to get rid of all nuclear weapons. And Superman's like, I can't do that, which is actually makes sense.
Right. And
then the newspaper spins it, and the headline: Superman tells kid to drop dead. And it was like, what?
Yeah, I'll believe that. Just like I'll believe Spider-Man and Mega Man robbed the bank together.
Any Marvel's Captain.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think me and Will had our final thoughts. What?
God, I haven't seen a plot this ridiculous since Spider-Man made a deal with the devil.
What do you... go. I'll give Mitchell the floor. Go ahead and go do your tangent on Superman 4.
There are no words. No, it was a mess, up and down, and there were like, on top of the already bad plot, it doesn't make sense because they cut out like 40 minutes of the movie. I mean, there's tons of scenes. There's a whole nother plot. There were 2 nuclear men. One of them was the precursor. He was like Bizarro. He was kind of stupid. And, he was bigger, but,
That's basically who Nuclear Man was.
He was Bizarro in a sense, but he wasn't as dumb as Bizarro. The first one was Bizarro. It was literally what you would think of when you think of Bizarro. Right. That didn't go well, and that's why they had to make a second Nuclear Man. I guess he got another strand from another museum. Whatever. I also love the lack of security in this museum. It almost looks like they shot it in a strip mall and just put a fake Superman display in, and then broke into it and ran away. Like this is the filming is so shoddy. It seemed like an Ed Wood picture. It's like, hey, the gravestone fell over in the background. Nobody's gonna notice that. But we did. The green screen effects were terrible. All technical aspects aside, I can forgive a movie with bad special effects if it has a good story. The story was absolute crap. They had plots that didn't go anywhere, stuff that wasn't explained. Marlon Brando, again, is absent from the movie. There's so much wrong. There's so much wrong.
I will say this, and final talk about Superman 4. I will say this. I am old enough, I remember, I actually went with my parents to McDonald's and got a Happy Meal that had Superman 4 being advertised on it.
Jesus.
For the box and the cup.
Why does McDonald's make these decisions?
Like, Superman 4, Quest for Peace, in theaters now. Yeah, I remember that.
One side note, that was probably one of my favorite, almost obscure jokes in Family Guy is when Peter was talking about how he liked it when they said the name of the movie inside of the movie. Yeah. So, it'd be like, Back to the Future and stuff like that. And then it just goes, and then you just see him in the theater. You don't see the visual, but you just hear, I'm sorry, Lois, but that's why I have to be Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Oh, so that's why they call it that. My final thoughts on Superman 4. What happened? What was going through these people's minds when they released this? It was like, it looked like an unfinished movie. It really did. It looked like the work print of a...
Superman 4, we ran out of money.
We ran out of money.
Now, before we continue, I just want to bring up one subject, and I want to try to get you guys quick thoughts on it.
Okay.
Supergirl.
Never saw it.
I've seen it.
Supergirl.
I've seen it twice. And my limited...
I thought it was Superman, not Kara.
from the twice I think, because it is not. It didn't hold my interest. It basically has nothing to do with the Superman lore at all, or the films that they had set up. The only connection is that the guy that plays Jimmy Olsen is still Jimmy Olsen. Is in it.
I will say this though. I do own Supergirl.
Do you?
I got it a couple years ago when the Green Lantern film came out. They were having this sale at FYE with all DC comic related movies, and I got it there.
Okay.
It's not a good movie, but there is a couple interesting things about it. They do delve into things about the Superman mythology that the Superman movies didn't. For one, you actually get to see inside the Phantom Zone.
Mm-hmm. That was neat.
And two, they bring up the fact that Kryptonians are weak against magic. Because the main villain is a witch.
Which had no purpose in that movie other than to make Kara's life hell.
Hell, yeah.
He's like, what am I going to do today? There's a Kryptonian. I'll fuck with her.
Yes, and Superman, Christopher Reeve, was originally supposed to be in the film.
Yes, he was. And you can kind of tell in a couple spots.
In one of the early drafts, they were supposed to have a romance. Which was weird because they're cousins.
Can you say incest?
Incest!
Inbreeding! Incest with incest. Maybe they would create a giant super baby that would be... oh dear.
Have 11 toes.
He would have 11
And
toes.
then they'd have to move to Alabama where that kind of thing's tolerated.
Oh, I apologize.
I know. We apologize to Alabama, and I apologize to Weird Al Yankovic for crudely ripping off of his lyrics.
Well, so I guess that's the final about Superman. Now,
yeah, it was bad.
Now, after Superman 4...
Though I must say, one thing that it did have above any of the Superman movies is it had much better special effects.
It did.
The flying effects were absolutely amazing in Supergirl.
Yeah. Now,
The end.
The end. Now, after Superman 4 flopped...
There was nothing.
Well, actually, here's the thing. We didn't see any movies. However, Superman stayed in the public consciousness through television. There was a Superboy TV show that I remember watching when I was a kid.
There was The Adventures of Lois and Clark, which has actually grown on me. I didn't like it when I first saw it.
You've seen a few episodes. What did you think of it?
I thought
it's all right.
Yeah, it was okay. Yeah.
It very much played to the Richard Donner lore.
Yeah, lore, right.
Now, but that's beside the point.
It was like you really like what you see in the title. You got to take it seriously because like Superman's not even like the major title.
No,
like,
it's Lois and Clark. Right.
Yeah, it became a romantic. Not a romantic comedy. It was just a drama.
Yeah.
Like Superman's barely there. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it did very much follow the Christopher Reeve style.
It was.
I mean, at least with Smallville, you had an excuse.
It was Clark Kent and Lois Lane with a side of Superman. So that's very cool.
With a side of
Now, I want to bring up another thing. During this time...
actually, I don't know if you guys know this, there was an 80s TV Superman cartoon show that used the John Williams music. It had like 12 episodes.
I've never seen it.
King Kong was in it.
I think I remember it.
I'll have to look for that. Well, anyway.
It had nothing to do with the Superman movies, they just used the music.
Now, during this time, began like this huge attempt by Warner Brothers to bring Superman back to theaters. There was rebooted attempts. The most famous one, and I want to let's talk a little bit about this, was Superman Lives.
Yes.
It was supposed to be directed by Tim Burton.
Oh, boy.
It was supposed to be written by Kevin Smith.
But the producer had a different plan.
And produced by Sean Peters. And it was supposed to star Nicolas Cage as Superman. Now, this project, of course, we've seen Kevin Smith talking about, giant fucking spider. Have you seen him talk about that, Mitchell, by the way? Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
I've seen him talk about that.
If Superman Lives hit theaters, if that one was actually made, what do you think would have happened?
I think it would have been a worse flop than Superman Returns, but it would have been a critical flop, but it would have gotten a lot of money simply because people would have flocked to see Nicolas Cage as Superman.
I can't.
Well, here's the thing.
Cage as Superman.
In all honesty, I don't think that this would have been a Superman movie.
You're right.
This was like, you know how there's a movie called The Invisible Man and there's the book The Invisible Man. They're both two entirely different things. I think that that's what this was going to be. It just happened to be called Superman. It just has nothing to do
It's
with...
more like Star Wars or some...
Yeah, I've read some of the treatments, and it's just like...
Like, oh, just because it's called Superman, it's not about the comic book Superman. This is like a different... We're talking
No,
about,
it was, but they completely changed the lore. And
I don't
the
think...
costume.
Yeah, I know, but that would have been their excuse.
I have to admit, though, and of course, I'm sure we've all seen that infamous portrait of the black suit with the silver S with the kind of spikes in the red. The suit does look kind of badass, but you're right, it's not Superman. You know, it's like Superman is like a dark kind of, you know.
Well, it was
superhero.
based off of the resurrection suit from the Doomsday
From the
suit.
Yeah, because
Doomsday
now,
stuff.
before we get into Superman Lives, in 1988 when Superman 4 flopped, Superman, regardless of the movies, Superman was still heavily on the rise because we had hard-hitting comic book stories. We had Superman Red, Superman Blue. We had the
Death and Return of Superman.
the Death and Return of Superman. We had toys lined up. We had an animated series in the works. We had video games being made.
So people were hungry to see.
Yeah,
the movie.
and we had an arcade Superman game that had the John Williams theme in it.
Right.
So Superman, regardless of the floppy movies, he still had a huge popularity.
I think the
going
movies
on.
actually did the other media a great favor. Since we had these crappy movies, we could go to the comics for good stories.
Right. We can go to the TV series. For
And they were making the figures that looked weird, but if you read the comics, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, Superman, he was definitely on a rise, regardless of the crash in the 80s.
Yeah, so Superman Lives, again, it was pretty much crashed because John Peters was crazy. But that was one thing that failed. There was another one where, well, J.J. Abrams, who's the director of Star Trek and the director of Star Wars,
I know
he
Star
did
Wars.
he did a treatment called Superman Flyby, which was kind of weird. Like Krypton was still around, and
Messed
Lex
with the
Luthor
lore too much.
Lex Luthor was supposed to be like a secret Kryptonian. I mean, they just messed with the lore too much. There was supposed to be a Batman versus Superman movie, which was supposed to be directed by Wolfgang Peterson. That never got off the ground. So you had all these different things coming up. Then, and finally, we get Superman Returns.
The movie
Bryan
that
Singer-
could not decide if it was a sequel, a reboot, or a remake.
Now,
Now before...
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and before Superman Returns, which came out in 2006, yeah, I thought so, we actually had started getting a decline in Superman at that time, since the 90s were Superman's prime when he had the animated series, we had the comics, we had the stories. But in the early 21st century, that's when it started to stop a little, because we had the world's finest, but then...
I disagree, because there's one thing you're forgetting.
What?
Smallville.
Yeah, we had Smallville.
started in 2001.
We had Smallville, but that was it.
Right.
And bear in mind, dude, I know we love Smallville, but not everybody did.
Right, but
Because
Smallville was still very popular.
Smallville was very popular, but there's a huge audience that didn't know about Smallville. There's an audience that had no idea Smallville was about Superman. And there's a lot of people that were disappointed in Smallville because they didn't get to see Superman. They got to see Clark, who'd do these amazing things, but they didn't get past the part that he wasn't wearing a costume.
So, all right, now Superman Returns. It was very interesting what was going on, because at that time, or the director is Bryan Singer. He did X-Men. He did X-Men 2. He was originally signed on to do X-Men 3.
But he left to do this.
And the Superman movie that was being produced or being made by Warner was supposed to be directed by Brett Ratner. Bryan Singer left that project to do Superman, and Brett Ratner went off to do X-Men 3, which in hindsight 2020 was a bad decision all the way around,
Yeah.
but we'll get into nothing. All right. Me and Will saw Superman Returns in the theater. And I have to admit, when you saw the opening sequence, where you hear Marlon Brando's voice, and you see Krypton blow up, and then you see the opening sequence, I got a little giddy.
No,
because,
we got the
Superman's
zooming
back.
credits.
This is
We
great.
got the opening
showed
space
off.
crawling
Yeah.
in. It was, and one thing I must say about this movie, I like it because of how much love and affection for the movies. I mean, granted, Bryan Singer was not a fan of the comics. He was a fan of the movies. He put a lot of love into what he created, and I like the amount of heart it is. It did not pull off the way it should have.
Here's the problem with this film. We've seen it before. This movie might as well be called Bryan Singer's version of Richard Donner's Superman, because it really just retread. It really seems like it didn't have any real story to tell. It just kind of retold the things we saw before. And as much as we loved the first movie and the first two films, we were ready to see something new. be some new interesting stories. Well, the whole thing too. Well, Superman in this movie, he leaves for like 5 years. He just disappears, goes, because he hears a report that Krypton may be still alive. So he goes out. Yeah, so he leaves. Then he returns. Lex Luthor is running around because Superman
wasn't there to testify at his trial.
Right.
So there was no evidence.
What do you guys think of Brandon Routh as Superman Clark Kent?
I like him.
He did really good.
He was constricted by the fact that he had to play the Christopher Reeve Superman.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, there's a lot of actors that have the potential to be a great Superman if they're allowed to be themselves as the character and not be forced to portray somebody else's beliefs on what Superman should be.
One thing I must say, though, even though he did a very good Superman, I don't think he did the duality of the character very well. It kind of went back to, how can you not see that this guy is Superman?
Yeah, but then, and also, you don't see too much of Clark Kent that much anyway.
Yeah, that's another thing.
And another thing I thought was weird was, this was just an aesthetic thing, was in the original Superman movies, Clark Kent had his hair slicked down and parted one way, and then when he was Superman, it was parted the opposite, and it was poofy and kind of wild. Not wild, but it was poofy. It was the opposite.
It's like my hair.
It was the opposite in Superman Returns. Not only didn't they do the part on opposite sides, which I thought was really clever. They did that, when he was Superman, it was this way. When he was Clark Kent, it was the other way. They didn't do that in Superman Returns. And when he was Superman, his hair was slicked down, which I thought looked terrible. And then when he was Clark Kent, he had kind of this bushy hair going, and it was like, I don't know, it looked weird.
To me, it didn't feel like Brandon Routh was playing Superman. It looked like Brandon Routh was trying to play Christopher Reeve.
Yeah.
So that's why he just felt stiff.
One thing I must say, whoever thought that woman could play Lois Lane.
I know, I was about to say that.
Kate Bosworth.
Holy shit! How do you fuck up a role?
She was too young.
She was too young, and she was just... What was Robin's dialogue in Batman and Robin again? She just bitched and moaned about everything.
And if you're going to go...
Why did you leave?
Well, here's another problem. If you're going to go out of your way to get Brandon Routh to look and act like Christopher Reeve, why not do the same thing for Lois?
Yeah. One thing I think would have been a much better story would have been to have... obviously you can't have Christopher Reeve because, he had died. And regardless, he was in a wheelchair and very old. Brandon Routh would have been fine. Margot Kidder's still alive. Gene Hackman is still alive. I mean, why not bring them back? I thought that would have been great because within the continuity of the comics, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I understand, Superman does not age as fast as human beings.
Nope.
So if he would have left, he would have returned to kind of an emotional heartbreak seeing Lois Lane as an old woman.
Right.
Which bothers me in the first place because...
It takes place in modern day, but it's supposed to be a sequel, but it's
their
not.
whole plot is messed up because he's supposed to take the spaceship that he got from where... back.
I think he built it in the Fortress of Solitude. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah, he's supposed to take it back to where Krypton was. There's a problem. Because Krypton was in an area in a galaxy that would have taken thousands of years to get to. If he had traveled from there to back and managed to live through the travel alone, Earth would be entirely different. Because when Marlon Brando, Jor-El...
Yeah, they kept Marlon Brando as Jor-El.
When they were talking about how Clark would adapt and be like a god to these earthly people, they were looking into their stones into the future of what Earth was going to be from their view in the galaxy when Earth hadn't been developed for 1,000 years. And even he says that he had been dead by 1,000 of their Earth years. So how is they going to expect to go back to where Krypton was and back to the planet in 5 years?
Well, the whole point of the story was that Superman leaves, he comes back, and now he's trying to find his place in the world. Which in itself sounds fine, but the way it's executed
is poor.
Is very poor.
Like I said, I think it would have been a great emotional...
And there's another problem is, why not tell anybody?
Right. Why did you just leave?
Yeah, why not? And here's another thing. there's bad guys in the world. Did everybody just take a rain check during those 5 years?
For as much as they're trying to pay homage to the original Superman, he does a lot of things that are very out of character.
Yes. Creepy stalker Superman
Creepy
using his
stalker
X-ray
Superman.
vision to spy on Lois.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't like deadbeat dad Superman.
No.
I think that, and it adds nothing to the story. I've watched, I like fan edits, and I saw somebody do a fan edit of Superman Returns. Much better movie the way he cut it. Completely cut out the deadbeat dad that the kid was Superman's
we'll
kid.
get to more
Didn't
on that.
miss anything.
We'll get back more in this in a little bit. But one thing I do want to say positively about this film, I did like Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor because he was kind of a combination of the Gene Hackman Lex Luthor and the more modern Lex Luthor with the corrupt businessman.
Yeah, he kind of had a. I think he was also a little hinting at Michael Rosenbaum.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he was.
Kryptonite.
Yeah.
I loved Gene. I loved.
He seemed like the only one actor in the film that was actually having fun.
Yeah. He did.
You had Parker.
Wrong.
You had Parker Posey, who was playing not Miss Tess Parker.
Mm-hmm.
No, come on, say the line.
It was Kitty.
Saying no. The other thing. Superman will wrong.
Yeah, he was having a lot of fun doing the role, and I enjoyed watching it.
Yes, I enjoyed his performance. Kate
Turn the
Bosworth
camera
needed to go away.
I said, turn the damn camera off.
So turn off the camera.
Now, they had this like little. There was also a lot of scenes that.
I think when he comes out of the bathroom.
You see all the wigs.
Yeah, which was an homage to the Gene Hackman.
He has that eyebrow twitch.
Lois Lane?
You had the scene in
You're bald.
Smallville where he's like fantasizing or remembering when he was a kid. Did that scene need to be there in that film? Did that really go anywhere?
It didn't go anywhere.
Didn't go anywhere?
It was just to remind you that he was in Smallville at some point, and to play that music from Smallville in the John Williams theme.
Then I think they wanted to show off the kid being able to fly for the first time.
Yeah.
Did you guys like the cinematography of the film? How the film
I did.
Yeah.
It was a very nice looking film. It was shot very much in a modern style, but still kept the feel of the original Superman movie.
Still, it also, one thing it did wrong was it also kept the flaws of the originals, how in Superman 4 he was able to hold the Statue of Liberty up by the finger, and in this one he's able to hold the front of a plane up via its nose.
We're going to get into that. Like, the big action piece of this film, it's not many, but the big action piece is the airplane rescue.
Well,
I really enjoyed that airplane rescue.
I did.
As a special effects action, it is a really good scene.
Yes, it is. It was so nice, and this is something I didn't talk about for fear of overbearing. Throughout the Superman movies, the music went
Down.
because John Williams didn't come back for Superman 2, and then immediately, even though it was the same themes, it sounded dated. It sounded like a 70s soundtrack.
Right.
And then Superman 3 came along. You have kind of these like weird like Danny Elfman weird kind of themes. And then every once in a while and these silly little march things.
Yeah.
Almost like Looney Tunes music.
Superman Returns did it right.
Had an excellent score.
Score.
Unfortunately, it wasn't John Williams, but John Ottoman, who did, I believe that's how you pronounce his last name, he did a phenomenal job. It's a very underrated score. He did a phenomenal job adapting Williams' themes while creating his own music.
Also, another thing that was really good about Superman Returns were the effects.
Yes, the special effects
where he's
were
flying
very excellent.
Were very, very good.
The suit I didn't really care for.
I like the suit. What do you think
It was
of the suit?
okay.
I like the suit actually because in all honesty, Christopher Reeve's suit I didn't care for.
Well,
too
that
much
was going
either.
off the one where Ma Kent made it for him.
Right.
Which didn't make sense that he
Ma
had
Kent
the
always,
rubber-looking
Ma Kent
one.
always made his outfit. And that's true even today.
Well, the way they explained today that Ma Kent made the suit after from the Kryptonian cloth.
She did.
Yeah, that she came.
She made him.
But the rubberized Superman suit. Well, it's just like if you look at it, like it's like if they're still playing off this, like Jesus, Ma Kent spent a lot of time on that. like you know, if you look, you can't really see it well in the film, but the kind of textured look it has, it's just the Superman S. as scales, and it's like, Jesus.
Well, who's to say that wasn't the cloth that he was wrapped in as a baby?
I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
She was a very good seamstress.
I like the S logo.
I do like the 3-dimensional S logo.
And Clark Kent had to help her. Well, yeah, Superman had to help her make the eye, but he would use his heat vision to cut the. Yeah.
Another action sequence I really liked too was the Gatling gun.
I do like that, shooting him in the eye. That was cool.
Yeah, the bullets were bouncing off the chest where he's walking. That really.
And that brought back, like I said, there were a lot of good parts in this movie, and it felt very much like the old Christopher Reeve Superman, where Superman's just like, the guy shoots him in the eye, and he's just like.
I remember when we saw that in the scene, and you see the Gatling gun, the bullets are bouncing off. I just said, Man of Steel.
Yeah.
That's right there, Man of Steel. That's what you think of. The bullets
pulls out the gun.
And one thing that the movie did do right that I commended on is it shows Superman's power at the end that unfortunately a lot of people don't believe. Everybody that is a common believer of Superman always believes that if there's kryptonite around, instant Superman turn off switch.
No, it is not.
No, it's not.
And that's bad writing.
Right, it will drain him.
But Superman, whoever did that scene did research. He absorbed that sun, enough of it to endure the kryptonite that it did nothing to him, was able to go under it and lift it up. That's the power he's got.
One of the most beautiful scenes, too, in that film is when he's flying up the sky.
Yeah.
It's powered by I wish I would have seen that in the IMAX, because I bet that would have looked so
it would have looked amazing.
Yeah.
I was unfortunate enough not to see this in a theater. I didn't see it until it came out later. But even seeing it on TV I felt, especially living through Superman 3 and 4, I felt my heart kind of went like, there were moments in that movie where I was like, I feel like a kid again. It's Superman. Oh my God, he's like whooshing around and blah blah blah. And, I went to Richard Pryor territory. I apologize. But no, there were a lot of things that they did in that movie that were very heartfelt. I loved the fact that the music was phenomenal. The special effects were great. Superman, the character of Superman, Brandon Routh did a good job. Kate Bosworth aside. I loved Lex. What the hell was Kumar doing in that movie?
Yeah.
Like, they kind of set it up like he was going to be Otis, and then he didn't do anything. He was just there.
Speaking of which, what did you guys think of James Marsden as Lois's boyfriend, husband?
I liked him. He was a nice guy. Mm-hmm. And she was a total bitch to him. She was a bitch to everybody.
Then you go into the major twist that Superman has a son.
Hated it.
I see where they were trying to go.
Yeah.
Where
they were trying
Marlon Brando was to Christopher Reeve, how Jor-El was the father and Kal-El was the son. They were trying to do it where now
the son becomes the father and the father becomes the son.
But it wasn't necessary.
It had no place in that movie.
It wasn't necessary. It wasn't wanted. It wasn't asked for. And the kid's a terrible actor, for one.
Yeah, he was not a very good actor.
You're bald.
Yeah, he just kind of...
The kid was terrible. The kid looks nothing like Clark.
Or his mom, for that matter.
Yeah.
It's like they pulled a kid off the street. Like why is this kid...
Hey, do you want to be in a Superman movie?
Yeah. What's
Superman?
It's like, why is this kid blonde from two people who aren't?
Black hair.
Black hair, yeah.
Actually, what would be a real twist? If it's not Superman's kid... It's the other guy's kid, and he's just like a Kryptonian that lost his memory. Because he had blonde hair!
Why does he need an inhaler?
Right.
That he suddenly doesn't need anymore.
Like, there are all these plot threads that just don't go anywhere. And also, I think the movie was a little too slow. That's why a lot of people felt the movie was boring. What do you guys think of the pace of the film?
It was... Again, you go into the territory where they couldn't decide if it was a reboot, a remake,
That's another thing, too. What was this film? Was it a sequel? Was it a remake?
It was a sequel.
I thought it was a remake.
When I heard about it, I thought it was a remake.
I thought it was a remake
But the
that took
title
place...
suggests it's a sequel, and the plot suggests that it's a sequel. But then again, it takes place in modern time, with all of these characters looking like they came off the set of fucking Dawson's Creek.
Right.
And
it only looks at Superman 1 and 2, but ignores 3 and 4.
it ignores 3 and 4, and it
I thought
barely looks at Superman 1 and 2.
I still think it's a standalone movie that is already adapted in the Superman universe.
I agree.
I would like to think that, but it's so inconsistent
yes,
that
it's inconsistent, and there's all these things that just...
And the only reason why they wanted to go with
in a perfect world, it's Superman 3.
Basically.
And I think that they only did the Christopher Reeve thing because that was their best shot.
Now, the Lex Luthor and his plan. Am I also a little disappointed at the end of the day his plan was just land?
Yeah.
Land. I'm gonna recreate.
When my father, the first thing my father said to me,
Get out.
no, after that.
Again, you see moments where they're trying to pay homage because there are lines that are recycled from the first film. You know, statistically speaking, flying is still the safest way to travel.
Statistically speaking, of course, it's still the safest way to travel.
You have Lois fainting.
Lois fainting.
Yeah.
But then again, you go into status where it's like, is this a remake?
How come it can't be on a different timeline?
Because they don't establish that,
They don't establish that. Right.
But they use they use Marlon Brando as Jor-El, where if they were making it a sequel, that's what they would do. They would use Marlon Brando, but everybody else was recast.
Well, then again, I mean, Zelda, for example, we didn't know about an existing timeline.
My
for 20
thing
years.
about this film is that, at least when you look at Batman Begins, that was a reboot. That was a reboot to the series. That had no connection to the previous Tim Burton's with Tim Burton and Joe Schumacher. Superman Returns really didn't know what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
It wasn't exactly a reboot, but it wasn't exactly a sequel.
The closest thing it is to is a sequel.
Right.
I think.
Right.
The closest thing it's to. Because it tries. And then again, that's when I'm saying that's the reason I like it. It's a sad way that I have to like it. I like it because they tried so hard to make a good final Superman movie, and it was just, they didn't know what to do. There was no...
They were more interested in, recreating the past instead of actually,
They could have
kept
it a sequel, but made something new. I mean, I would have liked to seen Lex Luthor again, but it would have been neat to see him in, a little role, a supporting role.
You know, I was thinking, I would have liked to see, he comes back, and Lex Luthor is or at least the public eye, reformed.
Yeah,
he's
I
very popular,
would have liked him to become the president. He's the president now.
Or a major figure that people respect, and he starts using this political or social smear campaign against Superman,
which would have fit in line with the Lex Luthor that we were getting to know.
One thing that bugged me is that Superman leaves, he comes back, and except for Lois, everyone instantly welcomes him back.
Yeah.
Instantly. And, alright, the final sequence. First, what do you think of Lex Luthor's plan? Did it make sense to you?
No.
Well, I guess that's why he's Lex Luthor. That his plans usually ever make sense to him.
Plan Z.
You see this big special effect moment that, he lifts the planet, or the continent. You like that scene, right?
Well, yeah, because it shows that it's not a turn-off switch when he's near kryptonite. He went up, absorbed enough sun, and he's totally immune to kryptonite for that time being.
Right. And then...
Except for the part when he passes out.
And then he passes out. He's passed out. Did you guys feel any emotion during that scene? I had a hard time feeling it because I know that Superman was going to live.
Yeah.
That part was sort of the homage to the death and return of Superman when he's in that comatose.
Right.
So what it's trying to do is the movie tries to please a lot of crowds, and if you look deep into it and you know where to look for, you know what to look for, then you can see some of the brilliance behind it, this is what they were trying to pass as a message. And if you recognize it, it works. Right. But still, when you're trying to make a movie out of it, not everybody's going to get it.
Mm-hmm. My major gripe with this film is that at first, Bryan Singer seemed like a great choice because he's such a huge Superman fan. Matter of fact, when he was making X-Men, he talked about how much he loved the Richard Donner Superman film. But another major problem is that he was a fan of the film that Richard Donner made. He wasn't a fan of the comic books, of all the 75 years of history. he completely ignored that and just tried to recreate the original Richard Donner film. And we had already seen that. And I think at the end of the day, that's why it failed. So final thoughts on Superman Returns. Will?
Flawed, but it has Easter eggs in it that are fun.
It's a fanboy film. It's for people who it was. It's as disappointing as it was a nice payoff for the wait that we had to get one final good Richard Donner style Superman movie.
But it didn't stop us from loving it when it first came out because we had no choice.
Yeah. But looking back, do you think the movie's boring?
It's not boring so much as it is just it takes a bit to get into it.
Okay. Well, funny thing about after that, after the aftermath of Superman Returns, and the movie, like I said, it made $391 million worldwide. So it was, I guess,
it was a financial success.
But it wasn't as big a financial success as Warner Brothers wanted. It didn't really position the character the way they wanted. And I felt bad for Bryan Singer because he tried so hard.
Again, that's what I'm saying.
So hard to try to get people to say, listen, let me do a sequel. Because ironically, the sequel is supposed to be called Superman the Man of Steel. And see, we're going to have a fight, and we're going to have these characters in here. And he tried so hard to get people to give him another chance. But the thing about Superman is, like, if you can't screw it up. You can't screw it up. You know, if you get this shot, and the fact that people weren't in Superman Returns as much as they were, Warner Bros. Decided to just go another direction. So after that, you had Christopher Nolan, who of course just made Dark Knight, and David Goyer, who wrote the script. They came to Warner Brothers with an idea to make a new Superman movie, and now that's morphed into
Man of Steel.
What are your guys' thoughts on Man of Steel? What thought of the trailers, and what's your hopes about this film?
I like the fact that it's called Man of Steel, because I like that the DC movies are going in the fact where it's sort of grounded in reality. I mean, it's a fantastical story, but it's grounded in more of a, like, that was something, again, I didn't mention that I liked about the original Superman film. Superman did not come up with his own name. He was just, you know, people like, the press came up with the name Superman because, you know, the S means something else. I like the fact that it's called Man of Steel and not Superman. I like the Henry Cavill, like I said, he's growing on me. From what I've seen in the trailers, I'm actually trying to know as little about this movie as I can. I'm not looking up plot points. I will not look up spoilers because I want to be surprised to come and see this movie. I like Michael Shannon as Zod, but again, like I said, Terrence Stamp will always be Zod. He was the best Zod. He was terrifying.
What do you think of Russell Crowe and Kevin Costner?
I don't know why I'm the only person on Earth that doesn't like Kevin Costner. I think he's boring. I don't think he's a good actor. And I think he's a terrible choice for the role of Jonathan Kent. I don't like him. I think he's an incredibly dull actor. He's never been exciting. But then again, I guess Jonathan isn't really an exciting person. I own a farm.
I own a farm.
Not really. He's Jonathan Kent. He's not the focus.
Right.
He's Jonathan Kent. Russell Crowe.
But I like that they're going with the modern creation of what the S stood for.
Yeah.
The latest adaptation is what the S stands for is a symbol of hope, when it had variations on meanings early on in the franchise. How it was, it had different meaning based on, because the S originally was a snake.
Mm-hmm.
And you can watch my Superman Unbound thing and I explain it there.
Yeah. I do like that. It's just, I liked that in the third trailer. He's like, what's the S stand for? It's not an S. On my planet, it means hope. And then she just goes, well, here it's an S.
What do you think Amy Adams is Lois Lane?
I like it because I like Amy Adams.
Mm-hmm.
I like
yeah,
I like Amy Adams. I think she's going to bring a lot of spunk to the role. I really hope that they give Lois stuff to do.
Right.
I don't want her to be damsel in distress number 3. I want them to give something. From what it sounds like in the trailers, she's going to be on a long hunt to figure out who this man is.
Right.
Which should again lend itself to being her maybe figuring out who it is, because she's the only one who's really, really looking into it.
It's going to be interesting to see, because I see a lot of people have problems with the new trailer because it looks so different from what they're used to seeing. I think a lot of people are really stuck on the Christopher Reeve Superman, but like you were saying earlier...
Yeah, you get hit with that nostalgia factor.
Yeah.
Let it go.
I let it go. I finally was just like, you know what, I'm going to give this movie a chance. I mean, it could wow me. I personally will, I mean, this is just my prediction, I personally will probably like this movie. I will still prefer the Christopher Reeve Superman.
Well, they're dealing with things in this film that I've always wanted to see dealt with in a film, because it looks like to me, like, right off the bat, people don't trust him.
Yeah. Which I would, like, which people wouldn't. Like, if this happened today...
You see him, like, running from the military, which is actually kind of cool.
Well, yeah, because today, you'd never see this happen. If the world saw a man flying around, we're either A, going to kill him, A, capture him, and
shoot him down.
we're going to try to dissect him to figure out what's making him do this, or we're going to try to get him on our side so he's working for our country.
Right, exactly.
Use him as a weapon.
One of the things I like that they haven't advertised him in any of the trailers, but the guy that played one of the he was the detective on Law and Order SVU forever. Mm-hmm. I can't think of his name. He's the one. He was the one that was. Fuck! I can't think of his name, and I always know what his name. Not Ben Stabler. He was Detective Stabler on Law and Order SVU for like 12 seasons.
Yeah.
And he's playing a general in the United States Army in this movie. So I'm like, I'm interested to see if he's just going to be Detective Stabler as a general.
He's probably going to be General Lane, which is Lois's father.
Oh yeah, that would be interesting. I think they have his name up on IMDb now. Not sure though.
One thing about Man of Steel is that a lot of people are hoping, and personally I'm hoping for, is that this will start a DC Cinema shared universe. The way that Marvel has done with the Avengers, that this may set up...
if this works, Dark Knight Rises is not the last one, because Christian Bale has been talked to come back and reprise.
There is rumors that Christopher Bale might be interested in coming back to do a Justice League movie. If Christopher Nolan has a...
So, yeah, his whole Costa Rica thing is... he's going to come in and Blake is actually going to put on that Robin suit. Oh, hell no. Yes, you are.
He plays somebody called Colonel Hardy. Honestly... As far as that goes, I really hope that they don't connect. I would like them to reboot Batman first. I really hope that they don't connect it to...
They already talked about rebooting Batman in 2015.
I understand that. I really hope that they don't try to connect it with that, because if you think about it, if you really think about it, because within the universe, when there's some big problem that Batman is going through, Superman will go like, I got this. And like, Bane has shut down the city for 3 months, and Superman, or Batman disappeared, and Superman, if it exists, Superman's just like, he'll be alright.
Here's how I disagree with you, because this is where things could get interesting. See, if they do combine the universes, I think this would ultimately help DC characters in general, because look at the Green Lantern, for example. Not many people knew who the Green Lantern was. A lot of people did know him, but Green Lantern is not a strong enough superhero to stand on his own. And just because you have other superheroes in your movie doesn't mean that it deprives from your focus. You can still have the focus be on this character. Television shows do it all the time.
Well, I understand that. But within the Christopher Nolan
But here's how I was going to back that up. In the Christopher Nolan universe, who's to say that during the whole... Like, maybe Batman was the first comic book crusader to be, in this timeline at least, be the first crusader that did this, while Superman was still being on his worldly voyage, traveling before he finally
dropped the mantle.
Yeah, dropped that crystal and became Superman. And
so what? Man of Steel's going to take place in 2024? I mean, what? No, see that's a problem, because then Man of Steel would have to be in the future.
We don't know what time period this is.
When they pull out their iPhone 4S, then we'll know. I'm sorry.
Because Man of Steel hasn't founded any dates, and Batman Dark Knight Rises came out last year, so Superman could still be doing his, like, when he's journeying around the world, finding out who he is.
One thing that could explain, this is just me, because it happened in the original film, that he spent like, what, 10 years or a long time in the Fortress of Solitude, learning, preparing to be Superman.
Yeah, maybe that's where he is.
Maybe that's something like will happen in Man of Steel.
Perhaps. I'll say when Man of Steel comes out, I'll reserve my judgment till then. But if they don't do that, then I'm not.
But I see your problem because that's exactly what happened in Iron Man 3. Because with Iron Man 3 and Tony Stark in the city of New York, where all of these Avengers, including Spider-Man, are, he's got these problems, he's got these bad guys to fight.
He's got this.
And you've got Thor, you've got... Well, Thor's got... Yeah, Thor's got an excuse not to be there. He's a god.
He's an Asgard.
You got the Hulk, you've got Captain America, you've got Spider-Man, you've got the X-Men, you've got Black Widow, you've got a whole legion of superheroes that were in New York City. Why is Tony Stark fighting this on his own? So I know what you're talking about, but you can establish this in the DC universe properly by having the proper setup, which Man of Steel will see if it does work.
There are a couple rumors that I heard that do kind of excite me. That Man of Steel, you'll get hints or like references to Central City and Themyscira, which would set up
Wonder Woman,
The Flash, and Wonder Woman. Which Man of Steel says, I think those should be the next two. Because I think it's pretty ridiculous that after all this time, we still haven't seen a Flash movie. We still haven't seen a Wonder Woman movie.
There's a Flash movie, but it's never been released.
Right.
Yeah, because the Flash movie, it'll be called The Fastest Man Alive.
We were talking.
You're the fastest man alive!
How it was called Dark Knight, Batman was called Dark Knight, and Man of Steel was called, Superman was called Man of Steel. And I think like it's kind of a trend now with DC, they were going to use like
Wonder Woman, goddess lady.
Oh my god.
Amazing Amazon. Fastest man alive. Next Green Lantern, man.
The not really that amazing Spider-Man.
Green Lantern was called Ring.
The Ring.
Yeah.
So a Justice League movie with these adapted DC characters can work. If they bring back the Green Lantern, that'd be great from the Green Lantern movies. I forgot what his name was. Ryan Reynolds. If they brought back him, it'd be great because him working with these other superheroes would be great. If they did a Green Lantern 2, but they incorporated Batman and Superman into that movie, it would still do great because you can still have the focus be on the Green Lantern and have these characters be the backup in the movie.
Mm-hmm. But like I said, I think they should not do a Justice League movie to at least establish these other characters first.
Because not everybody knows who these characters
are.
It's hard to believe, pending that we've got 70 years of history on these characters, but we don't have a lot of avid comic book readers.
Well, guys, I just want to thank you both very much for doing this with me. This is something I've always wanted to do. And,
you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Any thoughts before we end this little trip down Superman memory lane?
Superman, legends never die.
Sure. Mitch?
Thanks for having me on. It was nice talking about these films in depth. For those of you, out there, go out and watch the original Supermans. If you haven't seen them, they're great watches. Even the crappy ones, they're still,
history.
They're still history. I mean, it's neat to look at these movies and then go and see Man of Steel. I mean, I really hope that that Warner Brothers does a re-release of the original Superman, maybe a Blu-ray set or something.
Like that.
I really hope that they do that. That would be nice. It's just a great series to watch and see how it's progressed.
Or if you really want to get into your Superman, skip the movies, skip the games, dive into the comics where he was born and raised.
There you go. If you can find them, then that'd be a great read. Well, thank you guys for joining us. For Eugene, for me, for Will, myself, and Mitchell. Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.
Good night.